The storm descended upon the northern range with merciless fury. Wind howled between ancient pines, bending their mighty trunks as if they were mere saplings. Snow fell not in gentle flakes, but in horizontal sheets, blanketing the world in blinding white. Even the beasts of the forest, accustomed to the harsh northern climate, had taken shelter, their survival instincts warning them against the deadly cold. Through this maelstrom trudged a solitary figure. Catherine Silverlight pulled her inadequate coat tighter around her slim frame, cursing herself for the 10th time for ignoring the weather warnings. The research expedition should have ended 3 days ago, but she had been so close to documenting the unusual wolf migration patterns that she'd risked staying longer. Now she was paying the price. Her silver blonde hair, nearly white in color, whipped around her face despite being mostly tucked under her hood. Eyes the color of storm clouds scanned the terrain ahead, searching desperately for the cabin that should be somewhere in this vicinity. The GPS on her phone had died an hour ago, leaving her with only her compass and fading memory of the topographical maps. "Just a little further," she whispered to herself, the words immediately torn away by the wind. Her research on wolf packs and crisis situations had taught her that vocalization, even when alone, could help maintain focus and determination. Right now, she needed both. Catherine had spent her entire academic career studying wolves, drawn to them in a way she could never fully explain. While other wildlife biologists were content to observe from afar, she had always felt an inexplicable urge to move closer, to understand the pack dynamics from within. Her colleagues at the university joked that she had been raised by wolves. If only they knew how often she dreamed exactly that. A violent gust nearly knocked her off her feet, sending her stumbling against a tree. Pain shot through her shoulder upon impact, but she welcomed it. Pain meant she could still feel that hypothermia hadn't yet claimed her extremities. As she pushed away from the rough bark, something caught her eye through the curtain of snow. A structure, barely visible, perhaps half a mile ahead. Relief flooded through her, giving her a second wind. The cabin. It had to be. James had promised it would be there when she needed it most. James Silverlight, the old veteran who had found her as a toddler, alone in these very woods 25 years ago. The man who had raised her as his own daughter despite the whispers and strange looks from townsfolk. The man who now lay in hospice care, his life ebbing away after what the local sheriff had called a hunting accident. Catherine knew better. James had been too experienced a hunter for such a mundane end. With renewed determination, she pushed forward through snowdrifts that sometimes reached her knees. The cabin grew slowly larger in her vision, a beacon of hope in the white hell surrounding her. Just as she reached what appeared to be a clearing, her foot caught on something beneath the snow. She pitched forward, unable to catch herself with numb hands, and slammed face first into the frozen ground. For a moment she lay there, the cold seeping into her bones. It would be so easy to rest just for a minute, so tempting to close her eyes against the stinging wind and ice. A memory surfaced unbidden. James, sitting beside her childhood bed during a fever that had nearly claimed her life at age 8, his weathered hand stroking her forehead as he whispered, "Fight, Katie girl. You've got the blood of fighters in your veins, more than you know." With a groan that transformed into a growl of determination, Catherine pushed herself to her knees, then to her feet. Blood trickled from a cut above her eyebrow, freezing almost instantly in the bitter cold. She stumbled the remaining distance to the cabin door, fumbling with frozen fingers at the lockbox mounted beside it. The combination was James's military service number, which she punched in with clumsy precision. The box opened, revealing a heavy iron key. Catherine grabbed it, nearly dropping it twice before managing to insert it into the lock. The door swung open on protesting hinges, and she practically fell inside. The cabin was dark and cold, but blessedly free of the howling wind. Catherine forced herself to close and lock the door before collapsing against it, breathing heavily. Survival training kicked in. She needed heat, or she would die regardless of having found shelter. The next hour passed in a blur of mechanical actions, locating matches and lanterns, finding the wood stove and kindling, coaxing a small flame into existence, and feeding it carefully until the fire roared with comforting strength. Only when warmth began to seep back into her extremities did Catherine truly look around at her sanctuary. It was a hunter's cabin, rustic but well-maintained. A single room with a small kitchenette, a worn sofa, a desk against one wall, and a narrow bed in the corner. But it wasn't the humble furnishings that captured Catherine's attention. It was the walls. They were covered with maps, photographs, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes, all connected by red string in a massive web of information. At the center was a faded photograph of what appeared to be a massive white wolf, its eyes eerily similar to Catherine's own storm gray color. Written across the bottom of the photo in James's distinctive block lettering were the words, "Silver Moon Pack, last sighting 1985. Catherine moved closer, mesmerized. James had told her stories of the Silver Moon wolves throughout her childhood, tales she had assumed were just bedtime stories meant to comfort a lost child. Yet here was evidence that he had been researching them for decades. Below the central photo was a map of the Northern Territories with areas circled and annotated. One circle, larger than the others, was labeled Lunar Gate, possible boundary crossing. Adjacent to it was a smaller circle labeled simply, Found Katie Here, 1997. Her fingers trembled as they traced the connections between documents. This wasn't just research. It was an investigation spanning decades. And somehow she was part of it. On the desk beneath the wall display sat a leather-bound journal worn from frequent handling. Catherine opened it, instantly recognizing James's handwriting. The journal appeared to be the latest in a series with references to previous volumes. She flipped to the most recent entry, dated just 2 weeks before James's accident. Confirmed contact with Northern Emissary, it read. They know she exists. Warning received. They are watching the boundary again after all these years. Must prepare Katie for the truth before it's too late. The medallion will be her proof and protection. Catherine's hand unconsciously went to her throat, where a silver pendant hung on a leather cord. It had been with her when James found her, the only possession linking her to her unknown past. The medallion bore the image of a crescent moon with a wolf silhouette howling before it, strange symbols etched around the perimeter. James had insisted she never remove it, and she never had. A sudden noise outside the cabin snapped Catherine from her thoughts. A low, rumbling growl far too close to the door. Not the wind, something alive, something large. Instinctively, she doused the lantern, leaving only the amber glow of the wood stove illuminating the room. The growl came again, followed by what sounded like massive paws moving through snow. Whatever was out there was circling the cabin. Catherine's heart hammered against her ribs. In all her years studying wolves, she had never heard a growl with such depth and power. No natural wolf could make that sound. Her mind flashed to old stories James had told, tales of dire wolves and werewolves, and creatures that walk between worlds. Childhood fantasy, surely. A thump against the door made her jump. Then another, harder, the wood creaking under pressure. Catherine looked around frantically for a weapon, spotting a hunting rifle mounted on the wall. She grabbed it, checking quickly to find it loaded. The thumping stopped. For several heartbeats, silence reigned. Then, impossibly, a voice came from outside. Deep, masculine, commanding. The daughter of Silverlight, open the door. You cannot hide from what you are. Catherine's blood turned to ice despite the cabin's growing warmth. No animal should be able to speak. Yet the voice had come from exactly where the creature had been. Who are you? She called, hating the tremor in her voice. What do you want? I am Alexander Blackwood, King of the Northern Territories. And what I want, Catherine Silverlight, is to prevent a war. Open the door. The name meant nothing to her, but the authoritative tone struck a chord deep within. Against all logical judgment, Catherine found herself moving toward the door, rifle still clutched in trembling hands. I'm armed, she warned, reaching for the latch. As you should be, replied the voice, something almost like approval coloring the words. But you won't need weapons against me. Your blood protects you. Catherine unlatched the door and pulled it open just enough to see outside. The storm had lessened somewhat, allowing better visibility in the moonlight that now penetrated gaps in the clouds. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. A wolf stood on the porch. At least, it had the shape of a wolf, but it was massive, easily twice the size of the largest timber wolf she had ever documented. Its fur was midnight black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, except for a striking silver streak down its spine. Its eyes, fixed unblinkingly on hers, were amber gold and unmistakably intelligent. Human intelligence, impossible. As she stared, frozen in shock, the great beast stepped backward and began to change. Bones shifted beneath fur, the sound both horrifying and fascinating. The form blurred, elongated, and reshaped until a man stood where the wolf had been moments before. He was tall, powerfully built, with the same midnight black hair streaked with silver at the temples. A short beard framed a face that might have been carved from granite, all hard angles and stern authority. He appeared to be in his late 30s, though something in his golden eyes spoke of far greater age. He wore clothing that looked both modern and somehow ancient, dark pants and boots, a gray shirt beneath a black coat adorned with subtle silver embroidery that matched the medallion at Catherine's throat. "Impossible," she whispered, the rifle barrel dipping slightly in her slackening grip. "Says the woman with moonlight for hair and storm clouds in her eyes," the man, Alexander replied, his voice a deep rumble like distant thunder. "Nothing is impossible, Catherine. Your foster father knew that. It's why he protected you all these years." "James," Catherine breathed, "what do you know about him? About what happened to him?" Alexander's expression darkened. "He died protecting you, as he swore to do 25 years ago, when he found you beyond the boundary. He was a good man, a rare human who understood the importance of keeping the old pacts." "Human," Catherine repeated, focusing on the strange emphasis he placed on the word. As opposed to what you are, what I am." Alexander's gaze sharpened. "You truly don't know, do you? Despite your dreams? Despite the way wolves respond to your presence? Despite the silver in your veins?" A distant howl pierced the night, followed by another closer. Alexander's head snapped toward the sound, his body tensing. "We're out of time for gentle revelations," he growled. "Those are not my people hunting. They're purifiers, humans who know about us and seek our extinction, and they've caught your scent." Without waiting for permission, he stepped forward, forcing Catherine to back into the cabin. He closed the door behind him, moving with predatory grace to the window to peer out at the night. "Gather only what you need," he ordered. "We must reach the boundary before they surround us." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Catherine protested, raising the rifle again. "Not until you explain what's happening." Alexander turned from the window, his eyes now glowing with an internal light that was decidedly inhuman. "Your mother was Luna Silverlight, last queen of my people, thought dead for decades. Your father was human, a secret that would have meant execution for both under the old laws. James found you after your mother left you on the human side of the boundary for protection. And now the purifiers have finally tracked you down, while my own people have sensed your return. Both want you for their own reasons." He moved closer, his presence filling the small cabin with barely restrained power. "You are not fully human, Catherine. You are wolf kind. Specifically, you are the last descendant of the Silver Moon bloodline, the royal line thought extinguished decades ago. My people need you, I need you, to prevent civil war, to restore balance between our worlds." More howls sounded, definitely closer, hunting cries. "I know this sounds impossible," Alexander continued, his voice softening slightly. "But look inside yourself. You've always known you were different. You've always been drawn to the wolves, to the wild, to the night." Catherine's mind raced. The crazy wall of research, James's journal, her lifelong fascination with wolves, the dreams of running through forests on 4 legs instead of 2. The way wolves in her research studies approached her without fear, against all natural instinct. "How do I know you're not just insane?" she asked, though the rifle barrel had lowered completely now. "That I'm not hallucinating from hypothermia?" Alexander's lips curved in what might have been a smile on a less severe face. "You felt the change in the air when I transformed. You saw me shift from wolf to man. Your eyes can lie, but your blood cannot. Touch me, and you'll know." He extended his hand, palm up, an invitation, not a demand. Against all rational judgment, Catherine reached out. The moment her fingers contacted his skin, electricity shot up her arm. Images flooded her mind, forests seen through amber eyes, running with a pack beneath a full moon, standing on a balcony overlooking a city hidden within mountain valleys. She jerked her hand back with a gasp. "What was that?" "Recognition," Alexander replied simply. "Your wolf knows mine. Now, will you trust me enough to leave before the hunters arrive? Or would you prefer to test their hospitality?" As if to punctuate his words, a gunshot cracked through the night, followed by the distinctive sound of a bullet embedding itself in the cabin wall. Catherine's decision crystallized with the clarity that came from immediate danger. She grabbed James's journal from the desk and stuffed it into her backpack, along with a few other items from the cabin. The rifle she kept in hand. "How far to this boundary?" she asked, shouldering the pack. 3 miles northeast. Difficult terrain, especially in snow. We'll need to move quickly and quietly. I know these woods, Catherine said with more confidence than she felt. And I've been tracking wolves through snow since I was 12. Lead the way, Your Majesty. Something that might have been approval flickered in Alexander's eyes before he moved to the back door of the cabin. They're approaching from the south and west. We'll exit north, circle east along the ridge. Ready? Catherine nodded, her world tilting on its axis, but her survival instincts sharply focused. Alexander pulled the door open, scanned the area, then gestured for her to follow. Together they slipped into the snowy night, leaving the warmth and light of the cabin behind. They moved through the forest like ghosts, Alexander setting a brutal pace that Catherine struggled to maintain. Snow continued to fall, though less heavily now, helping to obscure their tracks. Occasional shouts and howls behind them indicated the pursuers had found the cabin and discovered their quarry missing. "They have dogs," Catherine whispered, after nearly an hour of silent travel. Her trained ear could distinguish between wolf howls and hunting dogs. "Not just dogs," Alexander replied grimly. "Wolfhounds bred specifically to track our kind. Another half-mile to the ridge, then we follow it east." Catherine's legs burned with exertion, her lungs raw from the cold air. Yet beneath the physical discomfort, she felt something else, a strange exhilaration, as if part of her was awakening after a lifelong slumber. The forest at night, which should have been terrifying, felt oddly welcoming, familiar even. They reached the ridge and turned eastward, moving along higher ground that offered some tactical advantage. The terrain grew increasingly rocky, the trees more sparse. Catherine realized they were approaching a series of ancient volcanic formations she had documented in her research. Stone columns and bizarre formations shaped by lava flows millennia ago. "The Sentinel Stones," Alexander said, noticing her recognition. "Ancient boundary markers. We're close." A howl cut through the night, much closer than the previous ones. Alexander swore under his breath in a language Catherine didn't recognize but somehow understood. "They're cutting us off," he translated, seeing her reaction to the foreign words. "The boundary is just beyond that rock formation, but they've circled ahead of us." "How many?" Catherine asked, instinctively checking the rifle. 5, maybe 6 hunters, 2 hounds. Alexander's expression darkened. "That rifle won't stop them for long." "It doesn't need to stop them. Just slow them down." Catherine surveyed the terrain with practiced eyes. "There's a narrow passage through those columns. Perfect bottleneck. They'll have to come through single file." Alexander gave her an appraising look. "You think like a wolf already. Tactical. Good." He gestured toward the stone formation. "I'll draw them out. You position yourself for clear shots." "You'll get yourself killed," Catherine protested. His answering smile was all predator. "I've survived 3 wars and 2 assassination attempts. A few hunters won't be the end of me." He shrugged off his coat, handing it to her. "Hold this. I move faster in fur." Before Catherine could object further, Alexander's form blurred and shifted. Within seconds, the massive black wolf stood before her, shaking out its thick coat. Golden eyes met hers for one intense moment before the wolf bounded away, heading directly toward where their pursuers would be approaching. Catherine watched him go, a strange mixture of fear and awe churning in her gut. Then training and survival instinct took over. She pulled on Alexander's coat, which was surprisingly warm and smelled of pine and smoke, then made her way to the narrow passage between stone columns. Positioning herself behind a large boulder with clear sightlines to the approach, she readied the rifle and waited. She didn't wait long. Shouts and growls soon echoed through the night, followed by a piercing yelp of pain. One of the hounds meeting Alexander's teeth, she guessed. Then came gunshots, their sharp reports bouncing off stone walls. Movement caught her eye. A man in tactical gear emerged from the trees, rifle raised, scanning the area. He was followed by another, both moving with military precision. Neither noticed Catherine in her concealed position. They were focused on something moving among the trees, Alexander, leading them directly toward the bottleneck. Catherine steadied her breathing, centering the first man in her sights. She had never shot at a human before, but these men had come to hunt her, to kill Alexander. Self-defense, she told herself, and squeezed the trigger. The shot hit her target in the leg, sending him sprawling with a cry of pain. His companion immediately took cover, returning fire in Catherine's general direction. Stone chips exploded near her head as bullets struck her cover, forcing her to duck down. A bone-chilling howl split the night, followed by a scream abruptly cut short. Alexander had found the second hunter. More gunfire erupted from further back, reinforcements arriving. Catherine fired twice more, not aiming to kill but to keep them pinned down, buying time. "Catherine!" Alexander's voice, human again, called from somewhere to her right. "Now, run for the stones!" She broke cover, sprinting toward the tallest of the stone columns. Behind her, shouts and curses indicated the hunters regrouping. A bullet whistled past her ear, so close she felt its passage disturb her hair. Alexander appeared at her side, a bloody gash across his shoulder, but otherwise intact. He gripped her free hand, pulling her forward. There, he pointed to a space between two massive columns where the air seemed to shimmer slightly, like heat waves over summer asphalt. They reached the columns just as more gunshots rang out. Catherine felt something hot graze her calf, a bullet, but just a scratch. Then Alexander pulled her through the shimmering air. The world changed. There was no other way to describe it. The air felt different, charged with energy she could almost taste. The forest beyond the stone columns was the same but somehow more vibrant, colors deeper, scents richer. And in the distance, where there should have been only wilderness, lights twinkled from what appeared to be a small city nestled in the valley below. "Welcome to the Northern Territories," Alexander said, his voice solemn as he watched her reaction. "My kingdom, your ancestral home." Catherine stared at the impossible vista, words failing her. Her entire understanding of reality had just been fundamentally altered. She turned to question Alexander only to notice blood seeping through his shirt. "You're hurt," she said, reaching toward the wound without thinking. "It's nothing," he dismissed. "Silver bullet grazed me. Painful but not fatal." "Silver," Catherine repeated, pieces falling into place. "Like werewolves in the movies?" Alexander's expression hardened. "We are not the monsters of human fiction. We are the first people, shifters, guardians of the wild places. Humans twisted our existence into horror stories to justify hunting us." "I'm sorry," Catherine said, surprised by her own immediate apology. "I didn't mean—" "I know." His expression softened marginally. "This is all new to you. There will be time for proper explanations once we reach safety." He gestured toward a path leading down toward the distant lights. "We should move. The boundary will keep out ordinary humans. But those hunters have methods to cross if they're determined enough." They began the descent, Catherine's mind racing to process everything that had happened in the past few hours. One question rose above the others. "Why me?" she asked as they walked. "If what you're saying is true, if I am part of this royal bloodline, what does that mean? What do you want from me?" Alexander was silent for several long moments before responding. "Our society is at a breaking point. The old laws that kept us hidden, that maintain separation from humans, are being questioned by younger generations who want integration. Others, like my cousin Marcus, push for even stricter isolation and a return to ancient traditions." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. 25 years ago, your mother disappeared during this same conflict. Many believe she was killed for her progressive views. Her disappearance left a power vacuum that I've struggled to fill, but I'm seen as compromised because I've worked with human allies like your foster father. "And where do I fit in?" Catherine pressed. Alexander stopped walking, turning to face her directly. His golden eyes reflected the distant lights of the city below. "You are the last of the Silver Moon bloodline, the true heir to the Northern Territories. According to our oldest laws, your claim supersedes even mine. Some will see you as a savior, others as a threat. But all will have to acknowledge you." He gestured toward her medallion. "That symbol you wear is not just jewelry. It's the royal sigil, proof of your heritage. And whether you choose to embrace your birthright or not, your mere existence changes everything." Catherine's hand went to the medallion, feeling its familiar weight with new significance. "And if I don't want any part of this? If I just want to go back to my life?" "That life ended the moment the purifiers found you," Alexander said bluntly. "Even if you could return to the human world, they would hunt you relentlessly now. And my people know of your existence. Some would seek to control you, others to destroy you." His expression showed a rare glimpse of compassion. "I know this isn't fair. You didn't ask for this heritage or its burdens, but sometimes destiny finds us whether we're ready or not." Before Catherine could respond, howls echoed from behind them. Different from the hunting dogs, these were deeper, more powerful. Wolf calls. "My royal guard," Alexander explained. "They've picked up our trail and are coming to escort us." Within minutes, 3 enormous wolves emerged from the forest, one gray, one brown, and one with russet fur that gleamed like copper in the moonlight. All were nearly as large as Alexander in his wolf form. The wolves approached cautiously, eyes fixed on Catherine with unmistakable curiosity. One, the russet female, moved closer, sniffing the air around her. "This is Sarah, my captain," Alexander introduced. "The gray is Callum, my strategist, and the brown is Jackson, my oldest friend and advisor." As if on cue, the 3 wolves shifted forms, the transformation smoother and quicker than Alexander's had been. Where the wolves had stood, 3 people now regarded Catherine with varying expressions of shock, suspicion, and wonder. Sarah was a striking woman with copper-red hair and keen green eyes, her posture militarily precise. Callum was older, perhaps 50 in appearance, with silver-streaked dark hair and calculating eyes. Jackson was a bear of a man, broad-shouldered with a full brown beard and friendly eyes that crinkled at the corners. "By the moon," Sarah breathed, staring at Catherine. "She looks just like Luna. The hair, the eyes." "It cannot be," Callum muttered, his expression suspicious. "The silver bloodline ended 25 years ago. This must be some trick." "No trick," Alexander stated firmly. "She bears the royal medallion. And more importantly, she crossed the boundary without assistance. Only those with First People blood can do so." Jackson stepped forward, his expression warm despite the tension. "Welcome home, little Silver," he said with genuine kindness. "Many of us never stopped hoping you existed somewhere." Catherine felt overwhelmed by their scrutiny, by the weight of expectations suddenly thrust upon her. The exhaustion of the day's events, the physical exertion, and the emotional upheaval finally caught up with her. Her vision swam, darkening at the edges. "I think I need to sit down," she managed to say before her knees buckled. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground, Alexander moving with inhuman speed. "She's exhausted," he told the others. "We need to get her to the palace. Sarah, scout ahead and ensure the way is clear. Callum, alert the royal physician to prepare. Jackson, watch our backs in case those hunters try to follow." As the others moved to obey, Alexander lifted Catherine effortlessly into his arms. Through the encroaching darkness of near unconsciousness, she heard his voice, low and strangely gentle. "Rest now, Silver Princess. You're safe. You're home." His words followed her into darkness as exhaustion finally claimed her. Her last conscious thought was that nothing would ever be the same again. Catherine awoke to softness and warmth, a stark contrast to the harsh cold she last remembered. For a moment, she kept her eyes closed, hoping desperately that everything had been a dream. The cabin, the hunters, Alexander Blackwood changing from wolf to man before her eyes. The unfamiliar scents surrounding her shattered that hope before she even opened her eyes. Pine and cedar, yes, but also unfamiliar herbs and flowers, furs and fabrics that carried subtle, exotic aromas. And beneath it all, the musk of wolf, not unpleasant, but unmistakable to her trained senses. She opened her eyes to a high-ceilinged room that took her breath away. She lay in an enormous bed with intricately carved wooden posts reaching toward a ceiling painted with constellations and phases of the moon. The walls were a warm golden stone inlaid with silver patterns that seemed to shift subtly in the light filtering through stained glass windows. The room blended ancient and modern seamlessly. Alongside hand-carved furniture and tapestries were elements that could have come from a luxury hotel, recessed lighting, what appeared to be climate controls, even a tablet computer resting on a nearby table. Catherine sat up slowly, taking inventory of her condition. Someone had changed her into soft sleeping clothes of a material she didn't recognize, silky yet warm. Her minor injuries had been treated, the bullet graze on her calf bandaged professionally. Even the cut on her forehead from her earlier fall had been cleaned and dressed. Her backpack rested on a bench near the bed, apparently untouched. The rifle, unsurprisingly, was nowhere to be seen. "You're awake. Good." The voice startled her. Eleanor Frost, the elderly woman Alexander had mentioned as his advisor, sat in a comfortable chair near the balcony doors. She was elegant, with silver white hair pulled into an intricate braid and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Despite her apparent age, she carried herself with vigor and authority. "How long was I unconscious?" Catherine asked, her voice rough from sleep. "Nearly 20 hours, Eleanor replied, rising gracefully to pour water from a crystal pitcher. She brought the glass to Catherine. "Your body needed to heal and adjust." "Adjust to what?" Catherine accepted the water gratefully, drinking deeply. "To the energy here. The boundary crossing affects first-timers strongly. especially those who haven't shifted yet. Eleanor's gaze was appraising. You're handling it remarkably well. Your mother was bedridden for 3 days her first crossing. The casual mention of her mother sent a jolt through Catherine. You knew her, my mother? A shadow of old pain crossed Eleanor's features. Luna Silverlight was my student, then my princess, and eventually my dearest friend. Her loss has been felt every day since she disappeared. She studied Catherine's face. You have her eyes, her hair, but your features, those come from your father, I think. And who was he? Catherine asked, setting the empty glass aside. Alexander mentioned he was human, but nothing more. That is not my story to tell, Eleanor answered diplomatically. When you are stronger, there are records, journals, Luna's own words that can answer your questions better than I. Catherine swung her legs over the edge of the bed, testing her strength. She felt surprisingly good, rested in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Where exactly am I? Alexander called it the Northern Territories, but that's not exactly specific. Eleanor's lips curved in amusement. You are in Silverhold, the capital city of the Northern Territories, a kingdom that exists alongside but separate from the human world. This is the royal palace, specifically the Silver Tower, traditional residence of the royal family. She moved to a wardrobe and opened it, revealing clothing that appeared to be Catherine's size. His Majesty has called a council meeting for this evening. Your presence is requested, but not required if you feel unwell. A council meeting. Catherine processed this. Political, I'm guessing? Inevitably. Eleanor selected an outfit, tailored pants in soft gray, a white silk blouse, and a blue-silver over-tunic with subtle embroidery. The High Council must be officially informed of your existence. Some already know, of course. News travels quickly in a city of people with enhanced senses. Catherine accepted the clothes, appreciating their quality and the fact that they weren't dresses or robes. And how exactly are they reacting to my existence? Eleanor's expression grew serious. Mixed. Some celebrate the return of the silver bloodline. Others fear change. A few question your legitimacy or see you as a threat to the current power structure. Wonderful, Catherine muttered. Wolf politics. Just what I needed. She set the clothes aside. I need answers before I meet anyone else. Real answers, not cryptic hints or vague allusions to destiny. The older woman regarded her thoughtfully before nodding. You are very much your mother's daughter. She too demanded clarity rather than tradition. She moved to the door. I'll have food brought while you dress. Afterward, I'll take you to someone who can provide those answers you seek. After Eleanor departed, Catherine quickly bathed in the adjoining bathroom, an unexpectedly modern space with a massive stone shower and amenities that rivaled luxury hotels. The hot water revitalized her further, washing away the last aches of her ordeal. The clothes fit perfectly, the materials finer than anything she'd ever owned. As promised, a meal arrived. Hearty stew, fresh bread, and fruit she didn't recognize but found delicious. She ate ravenously, her body demanding fuel. When Eleanor returned, Catherine was ready, her medallion prominently displayed over her new clothes, her mother's journal tucked securely in an inner pocket of the over-tunic. Where are we going? She asked as they left the room, entering a corridor of the same golden stone inlaid with silver patterns. To the archives, Eleanor replied, to meet someone who knew your mother better than anyone, except perhaps your father. They traveled through the palace, which proved to be a fascinating blend of ancient castle and modern facility. Guards nodded respectfully as they passed, their eyes lingering curiously on Catherine. Servants and officials stopped and stared openly, some bowing, others whispering behind hands. Catherine ignored them, focusing instead on memorizing the layout of the building, noting exits and security measures, a habit from her fieldwork in sometimes hostile wilderness areas. Eleanor seemed to notice and approve of this vigilance. Eventually, they reached a massive set of doors made of dark wood banded with silver. Two guards stood at attention outside. The Royal Archives, Eleanor announced, second only to the Great Library in historical importance, and the domain of Gabriel Silverstone, our chief archivist and historian. The guards opened those doors, revealing a vast circular chamber that took Catherine's breath away. Books and scrolls filled shelves that stretched from floor to ceiling, with spiral staircases and rolling ladders providing access to the higher levels. The center of the room held tables and workstations, some modern with computers, others ancient with parchment and quills. At one of the tables sat an elderly man with wispy white hair and spectacles perched on his nose. He looked up as they entered, his eyes widening behind his glasses. By all the moons, he breathed, rising shakily to his feet. It's true, you've returned to us. Catherine, Eleanor said formally, this is Gabriel Silverstone, Royal Archivist and keeper of our people's history. He is also your great-uncle, your mother's uncle, and the last living member of the Silverlight family. Until now. Gabriel approached slowly, as if afraid Catherine might vanish if he moved too quickly. Up close, she could see the family resemblance, the same storm gray eyes, though faded with age, the same high cheekbones. May I, he asked, hands trembling slightly as he reached toward her. Catherine nodded, surprised by the emotion tightening her throat. Gabriel gently took her hands in his, studying her face with wonder and what might have been tears in his eyes. Luna's child, he whispered. We thought you lost forever. The moment stretched, heavy with emotion, before Gabriel collected himself and gestured toward a private alcove at the back of the archives. Come, there is much you need to know, and precious little time before the council meeting. The alcove proved to be a comfortable space with armchairs and a small fireplace, walls lined with what appeared to be family histories and personal journals. Gabriel retrieved a crystal decanter and poured 3 small glasses of amber liquid. Moonfire, he explained, offering one to Catherine. Our version of whiskey, made from mountain herbs and aged under the full moon. Tradition dictates important conversations be accompanied by it. Catherine accepted the glass, sniffing cautiously before taking a small sip. The liquid burned pleasantly going down, warming her from within, followed by an odd sensation, a heightening of her senses, colors becoming more vivid, sounds more distinct. An effect of the moon herb, Gabriel explained, noting her reaction. It awakens our wolf senses, even in human form. For most, it's pleasant. For you, having never shifted, it's intense, Catherine acknowledged, taking another small sip despite the sensory overload. Now about those answers, Gabriel settled into a chair with a sigh. Where to begin? The history of our people goes back thousands of years, but I suspect your immediate concerns are more personal. My parents, Catherine confirmed. Who they were, why my mother left me on the human side, what happened to her. Gabriel nodded gravely. Luna Silverlight was the last of the royal line, heir to the Northern Territories. She was progressive, brilliant, beloved by many. She advocated for modernization, for careful integration with the human world rather than complete separation. His eyes grew distant with memory. 25 years ago, she was to be mated to Alexander Blackwood, a political alliance between the 2 most powerful bloodlines. Alexander supported her vision of modernization, making them natural allies. But there were those who opposed their union and Luna's progressive agenda. The traditionalists, Eleanor added, led by Marcus Redclaw, who believed in wolf supremacy and complete isolation from humans. Yes, Gabriel continued, a month before the mating ceremony, Luna disappeared. Blood was found in her chambers. Many believed she had been assassinated by the traditionalists. Alexander was devastated, both personally and politically. Without Luna, the silver bloodline appeared extinct. He leaned forward, his expression intense. But Luna wasn't dead. Now we know she escaped to the human world, pregnant with you. The question is why? Why flee rather than seek protection from Alexander or her supporters? Catherine processed this information, fitting it with what little she already knew. You think she was protecting me specifically, not just herself? Gabriel nodded. Luna discovered something before she fled, something in these very archives. She spent days researching ancient prophecies, particularly those concerning mixed bloodlines. He retrieved an ancient leather-bound book from a nearby shelf, opening it carefully to a marked page. The text was in a language Catherine couldn't read, but the illustration was clear enough. A white wolf with a silver crescent moon on its forehead, standing between 2 worlds represented by different landscapes. The Argent Prophecy, Gabriel explained, one of our oldest texts largely dismissed as myth until Luna began researching it intensely. It speaks of a child of 2 worlds who would unite the separated realms when the moon bleeds silver. And she thought this referred to me, Catherine asked skeptically, to a half-human child? The timing aligns, Eleanor said quietly. Luna's research, her secret relationship with your father, her flight to the human world. She must have believed you were the child of prophecy and that you would be in danger from those who feared change. Who was my father? Catherine pressed. You keep avoiding that question. Gabriel and Eleanor exchanged glances before Gabriel spoke reluctantly. We believe he was James Silverlight, the human who found and raised you. The room seemed to tilt around Catherine. James, that's impossible. He was my foster father. He found me in the woods. Did he? Gabriel asked gently. Or is that the story he told to protect you both? James Silverlight was Luna's trusted human ally for years, a former soldier who helped our people navigate the modern human world. They worked closely together. They fell in love, Eleanor added, forbidden by our oldest laws but not unprecedented. Luna kept the relationship secret, knowing the traditionalists would use it against her. Catherine's mind raced, reassessing memories of James, his protectiveness, his stories about her mother that had always seemed too detailed, too personal. His insistence that Catherine was special with a great destiny. When Luna realized she was pregnant, Gabriel continued, she must have known the child would be in grave danger. A half-human heir to the silver throne, unacceptable to the traditionalists, so she fled to James, her lover and the father of her child. But something went wrong, Eleanor said. Luna never returned. We don't know if she died in childbirth, was captured by enemies, or went into deeper hiding. James never told me, Catherine whispered, pain and confusion warring within her. All those years. He protected you the only way he could, Gabriel said gently, by raising you as a seemingly normal human child, far from those who would harm you. The medallion you wear, he must have given it to you to establish your identity when the time was right. Catherine's hand went to the silver pendant, seeing it with new eyes. Not just a family heirloom, but a royal sigil, proof of her heritage. And now, she asked, looking between the two elders, what happens now that I've returned? What does Alexander expect of me? That, came a deep voice from the alcove entrance, is a conversation we should have directly. Alexander Blackwood stood there, his powerful presence filling the small space. He wore formal attire, a charcoal suit with subtle silver embroidery similar to Catherine's overtunic, a silver circlet resting on his dark hair. Your Majesty, Gabriel and Eleanor acknowledged, rising respectfully. Leave us, Alexander commanded gently. The council assembles in 1 hour. Ensure all is prepared. When the elders had departed, Alexander took the seat Gabriel had vacated, regarding Catherine with those intense golden eyes. You have questions, he stated rather than asked. Ask them now before we face the council. I promise complete honesty. Catherine studied him, this wolf king who had upended her entire existence in less than a day. Did you know, she asked finally, all these years, did you know I existed? That Luna was alive and had a child? No, Alexander answered without hesitation. I believed Luna dead, murdered by those who opposed her vision for our future. I mourned her for years. It was only 3 months ago that rumors reached me. Whispers of a woman with silver white hair and the scent of wolf studying wolf packs in the mountains. And you recognized me as Luna's child? I suspected, he corrected. It wasn't until James Silverlight contacted one of my human allies, warning that she had been discovered and was in danger, that I began to hope. Catherine's eyes widened. James contacted you before he died? Alexander nodded solemnly. He never identified himself directly, but the message reached me through old channels Luna once established. By the time I sent people to investigate, James had been attacked. The purifiers got to him first. Pain lanced through Catherine's heart. James had died protecting her, just as Alexander had said. Died keeping secrets that might have changed everything. What do you want from me? She asked bluntly. Gabriel mentioned prophecies, royal bloodlines. What role am I supposed to play in all this? Alexander leaned forward, his expression unreadable. What I want and what duty demands may be different things. What I want is to protect you, to honor Luna's memory by keeping her child safe. What duty demands? He paused, choosing his words carefully. Our society stands at a crossroads. The old ways of complete isolation are failing as human technology makes our hiding places fewer. The traditionalists, led by my cousin Marcus, push for aggressive measures against human encroachment, measures that could lead to open conflict. And you think I can prevent that somehow? Catherine asked skeptically. Your very existence changes the political landscape, Alexander explained. As Luna's heir, you have claim to the silver throne, which has stood empty since her disappearance. Your mixed heritage, half human, half royal wolf, embodies the very integration Luna advocated. He met her eyes directly. Some will see you as the fulfillment of the Argent prophecy, the bridge between worlds. Others will see you as an abomination, a threat to our way of life. So I'm a political pawn, Catherine concluded flatly, a symbol to be used in your power struggle. Not to me, Alexander said with unexpected intensity. Never to me. I promised Luna I would protect her vision for our future. I intend to keep that promise by protecting you, not as a pawn, but as your own person, free to choose your path. There was something in his eyes, something beyond political calculation or duty. Catherine felt a strange resonance between them, like the electricity she'd experienced when they first touched. The council will demand answers tonight, Alexander continued. They will want to verify your identity to determine your place in our society. Some will welcome you, others will challenge you. A few may even wish you harm. And what will you do? Catherine asked, somehow knowing his answer mattered more than it should. Stand beside you, he replied simply. Not behind, not in front, beside. As allies, as equals. The sincerity in his voice struck Catherine deeply. Despite everything, despite the impossibility of her situation and the secrets and dangers surrounding her, she found herself believing him. I'm not ready to be some prophesied savior, she said finally. I'm not even sure I believe all this yet. But I want answers about my mother, about this world, about myself. And those answers are here, not in the human world. She straightened, decision made. I'll face your counsel. I'll hear what they have to say. After that, we'll see. Alexander nodded, satisfaction in his golden eyes. A wise approach, neither committing nor retreating. He stood, offering his hand. Shall we then? The future of two worlds awaits. Catherine took his hand, feeling again that strange connection between them. As they left the archives and walked toward the council chambers, palace staff and guards bowed respectfully. Word of her identity had clearly spread. Outside the massive double doors of the council chamber, Alexander paused, turning to face her. Whatever happens in there, he said quietly, remember this. You are not alone anymore, Catherine Silverlight. You have found your pack, your family, your home. The doors swung open before them, revealing a grand circular chamber filled with the most powerful members of Wolf Society. All eyes turned to Catherine as she entered beside their king, murmurs rising like wind through forest leaves. Catherine lifted her chin, the medallion gleaming at her throat. Her mother's daughter, James's daughter, heir to the silver throne, half human, half wolf, belonging fully to neither world, yet potentially the bridge between them. She stepped forward into her destiny, uncertain of the future but determined to face it on her own terms. And somewhere deep within her, something ancient and powerful began to stir. The wolf that had slumbered all her life, finally awakening to answer the call of the moon and blood. The council chamber fell silent as Catherine entered beside Alexander. Circular in design with tiered seating, the grand space resembled an ancient amphitheater more than a modern boardroom. Ornate carvings of wolves and moon phases adorned stone walls inlaid with precious metals that caught the light from crystal chandeliers overhead. 24 members of the High Council sat in their designated places, representing the major bloodlines and territories under Northern rule. They wore formal attire that blended traditional and modern elements, suits and dresses adorned with clan symbols, ancient medals, and family crests. Their collective attention fixed on Catherine with an intensity that made her skin prickle. At the far end of this chamber sat a man whose resemblance to Alexander was unmistakable, though his features were sharper, less weathered by responsibility. Marcus Redclaw, Alexander had called him, cousin and leader of the traditionalist faction. His golden eyes, several shades lighter than Alexander's, regarded Catherine with naked hostility. Honored council, Alexander's voice filled the chamber without effort, commanding attention through sheer presence rather than volume. I present to you Catherine Silverlight, daughter of Luna Silverlight and James Silverlight, heir to the silver throne and the last of the royal bloodline. Murmurs rippled through the assembly, some skeptical, others awed. Catherine stood straight, chin high, face composed despite the hurricane of emotions within. Her scientist mind cataloged reactions, identifying allies and enemies among the unfamiliar faces. This is absurd, Marcus spoke first, his voice smooth as silk yet edged with contempt. The silver bloodline ended with Luna's death 25 years ago. This woman is clearly human, perhaps with some diluted shifter heritage, but certainly not royal blood. She bears the royal medallion, Eleanor Frost countered from her council seat, and she crossed the boundary unaided, something no human can do, as you well know, Marcus. Trinkets can be stolen, Marcus dismissed with a wave, and half-breeds have crossed the boundary before, though rarely. These prove nothing. Then perhaps this will. Gabriel Silverstone stepped forward, ancient and dignified. He carried an ornate silver bowl filled with clear liquid that shimmered unnaturally. The moon's truth cannot be deceived. If Catherine is truly of the silver bloodline, the waters will confirm it. Catherine glanced at Alexander, who nodded almost imperceptibly. She understood his silent message. This was the test he had warned her about, the verification the council would demand. Gabriel approached, offering the bowl. 3 drops of your blood, freely given, will reveal your true nature to all present. Catherine removed the small utility knife she habitually carried in her pocket, a researcher's tool she'd used countless times for specimens and samples. Without hesitation, she pricked her finger and allowed 3 drops of blood to fall into the shimmering liquid. The moment her blood touched the water, a transformation began. The liquid glowed silver white, illuminating the chamber with ethereal light. Within the bowl, the blood droplets formed a pattern, the same crescent moon and wolf silhouette that adorned Catherine's medallion. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even Marcus appeared momentarily speechless. "The moon's truth has spoken," Gabriel announced solemnly. "This is indeed Catherine Silverlight, daughter of Luna, rightful heir to the silver throne." The council erupted in a cacophony of voices, some raised in celebration, others in protest. Alexander raised a hand and the chamber fell silent once more. "The evidence is irrefutable," he stated firmly. "However, Catherine has only just discovered her heritage. She requires time to learn our ways, our history, and the responsibilities of her bloodline before any formal acknowledgement of succession." "Convenient," Marcus sneered, recovering his composure. "The lost heir appears just as your support wanes, cousin, and she requires your guidance and protection, naturally." "Watch your accusations, Marcus." Alexander's voice dropped dangerously low, a hint of growl beneath the words. "I have tolerated your disrespect toward me, but you will not disrespect Luna's daughter in my presence." The tension between the 2 men crackled like lightning before a storm. Catherine sensed the deeper currents, decades of political rivalry, fundamentally different visions for their people's future, and perhaps personal grievances long unresolved. "May I speak?" Catherine's voice cut through the tension, surprising even herself with its steadiness. All eyes turned to her, many widening in shock at her presumption. Council protocol likely had strict rules about who could speak when, but Catherine had no patience for such formalities. "I didn't ask what's this heritage or position," she continued, when no one objected. "Until yesterday, I believed myself an ordinary human scientist who happened to study wolves. I don't seek a throne or power over anyone." She looked directly at Marcus. "I understand your skepticism, Counselor Redclaw. In your position, I would share it. But I am here seeking truth, not power. Truth about my mother, about this world she came from, and about myself." Her gaze swept the chamber. "I won't be used as a political pawn by anyone, not by those who welcome me, nor by those who fear me. I make no claims to authority here, but I do claim the right to discover my own heritage without interference." A heavy silence followed her words. Catherine sensed she had surprised them. Perhaps they had expected either timid confusion or arrogant entitlement from Luna's half-human daughter. Her measured, forthright approach had caught them off guard. "Well spoken," said a new voice. A woman with dark skin and silver-streaked black hair pulled into an elegant knot. She wore military decorations on her formal attire. "I am General Diana Stormcrest, commander of the Northern Armies and member of this council. I knew your mother well. She too valued truth above politics." Diana stood addressing the council. "I move that we acknowledge Catherine Silverlight's identity as proven by the moon's truth, but defer any questions of succession or authority until she has had proper time to acclimate to our world and society." "I second the motion," said another council member, an older man with kind eyes and a scholarly demeanor. "Those in favor?" Alexander called. 17 hands raised. The motion carried by a significant majority. "Then it is decided," Alexander concluded. "Catherine Silverlight will be officially welcomed as Luna's heir, with all rights of a royal bloodline member, but without immediate political authority. She will be afforded the protection of the crown and access to all resources needed to learn our ways." His gaze shifted to Marcus and his supporters. "Any action against her will be considered treason against the royal bloodline. Am I understood?" The threat was unmistakable. Marcus's eyes narrowed, but he inclined his head in reluctant acknowledgement. "The council is adjourned," Alexander announced. "Preparations for tomorrow's moonrise ceremony will continue as planned." As council members filed out, many approached Catherine briefly, offering formal greetings, welcome, or at least careful acknowledgement. Marcus and his supporters departed without such courtesies, their disdain evident. When the chamber had emptied except for Alexander's inner circle, Catherine finally allowed her shoulders to relax slightly. That went better than expected, she murmured. You handled yourself admirably, Eleanor said, genuine approval in her voice. Many expected you to falter under such scrutiny. I've defended research findings before hostile academic committees, Catherine replied with a small smile. This wasn't so different, just with better costumes and more dramatic lighting. Her attempt at humor earned appreciative chuckles from several of Alexander's advisors. What's this moonrise ceremony? Catherine asked, recalling Alexander's final announcement. A monthly tradition, Alexander explained. When the full moon rises, our people gather to honor our heritage, settle disputes, make important announcements, and celebrate as a community. Tomorrow night's ceremony will be your official introduction to our society. Catherine felt a flutter of anxiety at the prospect of a formal public presentation. And if Marcus decides to make trouble? He will, Alexander stated matter-of-factly. But not openly, not yet. He'll watch and wait, searching for weaknesses or opportunities to discredit you. Comforting, Catherine remarked dryly. You should rest, Alexander said, his tone softening slightly. Today has been overwhelming, and tomorrow will be equally demanding. Catherine wanted to argue that she needed more information, more answers. But exhaustion was indeed settling into her bones despite her long sleep earlier. The emotional and mental strain of the day's events had taken their toll. A wise suggestion, Eleanor agreed. I'll escort you back to your chambers. As Catherine turned to leave, Alexander spoke again. Catherine. She paused, looking back at him. You honored your bloodline today. Luna would have been proud. The unexpected praise affected her more deeply than it should have. She nodded once, unable to form a proper response, and followed Eleanor from the chamber. That night, Catherine dreamed of running through moonlit forests on four paws, the exhilaration of speed and freedom unlike anything she'd experienced in human form. She woke before dawn with the phantom sensation of fur rippling over skin, her senses hyper-aware of every smell and sound in her chambers. The wolf within was stirring, growing closer to the surface with each passing hour in this world of her maternal ancestry. Dawn arrived with several attendants bearing breakfast and formal clothing for the day's activities. Catherine accepted their assistance with grace, but insisted on maintaining some independence, particularly in choosing which of the offered outfits she would wear. The staff seemed surprised but pleased by her polite assertiveness. After breakfast, Eleanor arrived to begin what she called fundamental education, a crash course in Northern Territory's history, culture, and politics. They settled in a private study adjacent to Catherine's chambers, surrounded by books, maps, and digital displays. We'll start with its basics, Eleanor said, activating a holographic display that showed a detailed map of territories Catherine had never seen on any human cartography. The Northern Territories encompass what humans would call parts of Alaska, Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia, though our boundaries don't align with human political borders. She manipulated the display, zooming out to show additional regions. To the south are the Central Pacts, smaller, more numerous territories with their own leadership structures, but allied to us. To the east, the Atlantic clans, seafaring shifters with their own distinct culture. And to the west, across the ocean. Eleanor's expression darkened slightly. The Western Kingdom, ruled by the Stormblood dynasty for 7 centuries. Our historical rivals and occasional enemies. Are we currently at war with them? Catherine asked, noting Eleanor's tone. Not officially. We've maintained an uneasy peace for the past 50 years through treaties and trade agreements. But King Rafe Stormblood is ambitious and opportunistic. Any sign of weakness or division in the north would tempt him to press his advantage. Catherine absorbed this information, recognizing its immediate relevance to her situation. So my appearance, potentially destabilizing the clear line of succession, could invite outside interference. Eleanor looked impressed. Precisely. You grasp political implications quickly. I've studied wolfpack dynamics for years, Catherine replied. Different contexts, same basic principles, territory, hierarchy, alliance, and conflict. The morning continued with lessons on history, major bloodlines, and governance structures. Catherine listened attentively, asking pointed questions and making connections between concepts. Her academic background served her well in absorbing the complex information. By midday, they had progressed to more personal history, specifically the Silver bloodline in Luna's reign. Your mother ascended to the Silver throne at just 23, After her parents died in a border skirmish with rogue shifters, Eleanor explained, showing images of a young woman who looked startlingly like Catherine. She was brilliant, progressive, charismatic. She pushed for modernization, for selective integration with the human world, for educational reforms. Catherine studied her mother's image, searching for connections to her own features, her own personality, and that made her enemies. Yes, the old guard, traditionalists who believed in complete separation from humans, saw her ideas as dangerous, even heretical. Marcus Redclaw's father led the opposition, with Marcus as his eager apprentice. What about Alexander? Where did he stand in all this? Eleanor's expression softened slightly. Alexander is a moderate. He values tradition but recognizes the necessity of adaptation. He and Luna were political allies first, finding common ground in their vision for modernization without abandoning our core identity. She hesitated before continuing. Their arranged mating was initially political. Uniting the two most powerful bloodlines would create a formidable front against the traditionalists. But over time, they developed genuine respect and affection for each other. But then she fell in love with James, Catherine concluded. Yes, Eleanor sighed heavily. Luna and Alexander were not yet formally mated when she began working closely with James on her human integration initiatives. James was exceptional, a human who accepted our existence without fear, who understood our struggles and respected our traditions even while helping us navigate the modern world. Catherine felt a complex mixture of emotions at this insight into her parents' relationship. Did Alexander know about them? If he did, he never spoke of it, but Alexander misses very little. Eleanor's gaze became distant, lost in memory. When Luna disappeared, he was devastated. He led the search himself for months, refusing to accept she might be dead despite the blood found in her chambers. And when no trace was found, he changed, hardened, took the crown that would have been shared and bore its weight alone. Continued many of Luna's initiatives, but more cautiously, always watching for threats from within and without. Catherine digested this information, adding layers to her understanding of the Wolf King, who had turned her life upside down. He's been ruling for 25 years without a mate or heir. Isn't that unusual for your people? Unprecedented, Eleanor confirmed. There were countless attempts to arrange political matches, particularly early in his reign. He refused them all. Some believe he still mourned Luna. Others whisper he made some sacred vow. Whatever the reason, he has ruled alone, making him both respected for his dedication and vulnerable to those who question his bloodline's future. The implication hung unspoken between them. Catherine chose not to address it directly. Tell me about these purifiers, she said instead. The humans who attacked us at the cabin. Who are they? Eleanor's expression grew grave. A dangerous evolution of ancient hunter groups. Throughout history, some humans discovered our existence and hunted us, usually isolated incidents, easily contained. But in the modern era, with technology and global communication, these groups became organized, methodical. She activated another display showing what appeared to be military-style operations. The purifiers emerged about 30 years ago, led by Ezekiel Blackburn, a former military scientist obsessed with what he calls the shifter threat to humanity. They have advanced weapons, political connections in human governments, and resources we can't easily counter. Catherine recalled the hunters who had pursued them with professional precision. And they knew about me somehow? They've been searching for Luna for decades. James kept you hidden successfully for years, but something changed recently. Perhaps they obtained new information, or perhaps your research work created a pattern they recognized. The afternoon continued with more lessons, social customs, expected behaviors, the complex etiquette of shifter society. By early evening, Catherine's head was swimming with information, yet she knew she had barely scratched the surface of what she needed to understand. That's enough for today, Eleanor finally declared. You need to prepare for the moonrise ceremony. Your attendants will assist you with the traditional attire. Catherine returned to her chambers to find an elaborate outfit laid out. A silver-white formal dress with intricate embroidery depicting wolves and moon phases, alongside delicate jewelry including a circlet that matched the design of her medallion. This is a bit much, she said to the waiting attendants. It's traditional ceremonial attire for the silver bloodline, my lady, one explained respectfully, designed to honor your heritage while introducing you to your people. Your people. The phrase still felt alien to Catherine. Nevertheless, she allowed the attendants to help her prepare, submitting to their ministrations with as much grace as she could muster. When they finished, she barely recognized the woman in the mirror. The dress complemented her silver blonde hair and storm gray eyes perfectly, making her look ethereal, almost otherworldly. The royal medallion took center place at her throat, now part of a coordinated ensemble rather than a simple keepsake. "You look every inch a silver princess," came Alexander's voice from the doorway. Catherine turned to find him watching her with an unreadable expression. He, too, was formally dressed in ceremonial attire, a charcoal suit with silver embroidery matching the patterns on her dress, a silver circlet resting on his dark hair. "I feel like I'm wearing a costume," she admitted, playing a part. "Aren't we all?" he replied with surprising candor. "Every role comes with its uniform, whether lab coat or royal regalia." He entered the room fully, dismissing the attendants with a gesture. When they were alone, he spoke more quietly. "Tonight will not be easy. The entire community will be watching, judging, forming opinions that may determine your safety in the days ahead." "No pressure," Catherine quipped, masking nervousness with humor. The corner of Alexander's mouth lifted slightly, the closest thing to a smile she had seen from him. "You handled the council with remarkable poise. I have no doubt you'll manage tonight with equal grace." He offered his arm formally. "Shall we? The moon rises in 20 minutes, and tradition dictates the royal family enters the ceremony grounds at the exact moment of moonrise." Catherine hesitated only briefly before placing her hand on his arm. "Lead the way, Your Majesty." They walked through to the palace quarters in silence, palace staff bowing respectfully as they passed. Catherine used the time to center herself, drawing on the same mental discipline that had served her during fieldwork in challenging conditions. They emerged from this palace onto a wide terrace overlooking what appeared to be an ancient amphitheater built into the side of the mountain. Thousands of people had gathered in concentric circles around a central stone dais, with bonfires and torches illuminating the growing dusk. "The entire city has come to witness your return," Alexander murmured. "Word travels quickly among our kind." Catherine's throat tightened at the sight of so many strangers gathered because of her. "What exactly am I supposed to do?" "Walk with me to the central dais when the moon appears. Stand straight, head high. I will make the formal introduction. You need only acknowledge the gathering with a gesture." He demonstrated a slight inclination of the head, combined with an open palm gesture. "After that, we observe the ceremonies, traditional displays of skill, resolution of formal disputes, community announcements." It sounded straightforward enough, yet Catherine sensed underlying currents. "And what's really happening beneath all the ceremony?" Alexander's golden eyes flicked to her, approval evident. "You're being evaluated. Your presence, your composure, your reactions. The community is deciding whether you are truly your mother's daughter or merely her biological offspring." The difference being, Luna was beloved not just for her bloodline, but for her character, her wisdom, compassion, and strength. They're looking for those qualities in you. Before Catherine could respond, a murmur rippled through the gathering below. On the eastern horizon, the full moon was beginning to rise, enormous and silver-white against the darkening sky. "It's time," Alexander said quietly. "Remember who you are, Catherine Silverlight. Remember whose blood runs in your veins." Together, they descended the stone steps from the terrace toward the amphitheater. A hush fell over the gathered crowd as they appeared, all eyes fixed upon them. No, Catherine realized, all eyes fixed upon her. The walk to the central dais seemed endless, each step measured and deliberate. Catherine kept her gaze forward, chin high, expression composed despite the scrutiny of thousands. When they reached the stone platform, Alexander positioned her at his side, facing the community as the full moon continued its ascent, bathing the gathering in silver light. "People of the Northern Territories." Alexander's voice carried effortlessly across the amphitheater without amplification. "Tonight, the moon goddess has blessed us with a miracle long thought impossible. After 25 years of absence, the silver bloodline returns to us." He gestured toward Catherine. "I present Catherine Silverlight, daughter of Luna Silverlight and James Silverlight, heir to the silver throne, returned to her ancestral home." The silence that followed was absolute, thousands of eyes examining every detail of her appearance, every nuance of her posture. Catherine maintained her composure, making the formal acknowledgement gesture Alexander had demonstrated. Then, starting from the inner circle and spreading outward like ripples in a pond, members of the community began to kneel, heads bowed in respect. Not everyone, Catherine noted pockets of resistance, particularly in sections where Marcus's supporters were concentrated, but the vast majority showed formal deference to her bloodline. When the acknowledgement ended, Alexander guided her to ornate chairs positioned on the dais. "First phase complete," he murmured as they sat. "You did well." The ceremony proceeded with a series of rituals Catherine struggled to follow despite Eleanor's earlier lessons. Young shifters demonstrating their first controlled transformations. Elders leading communal prayers to the moon goddess. Warriors engaging in stylized combat displays that showcased both skill and restraint. Throughout it all, Catherine observed keenly, noting the complex social dynamics at play. Though unable to understand all the cultural nuances, her scientist's eye for behavioral patterns helped her identify key relationships and power structures within the community. Midway through the ceremony, a disturbance rippled through the gathered crowd. Catherine tensed, sensing trouble before she could see its source. Alexander likewise stiffened beside her, his relaxed ceremonial posture shifting subtly to alertness. Marcus Redclaw approached the central dais, flanked by two stern-faced supporters. He wore formal attire similar to Alexander's, but in deep burgundy rather than charcoal, with gold accents instead of silver. The crowd parted before him, murmurs spreading in his wake. "Your Majesty," Marcus addressed Alexander with perfect formal courtesy belied by the challenge in his eyes. "I invoke the right of questioning, as is traditional when a new bloodline heir is presented." Alexander's expression remained impassive, but Catherine sensed his displeasure. "The right of questioning is indeed traditional, Counselor Redclaw, though typically exercised after the heir has had time to acclimate to our ways." "These are unusual circumstances," Marcus replied smoothly. "The community deserves assurance beyond mere blood testing, particularly when succession may be at stake." It was a political maneuver, Catherine realized. Marcus was forcing the issue in a public forum where Alexander would have limited room to maneuver without appearing dictatorial. "Very well," Alexander conceded with evident reluctance. "You may ask 3 questions, as tradition allows." Marcus turned to Catherine, his golden eyes, lighter than Alexander's almost yellow, regarding her with calculated assessment. "First question," he announced for all to hear. "What do you know of our most sacred law, the law of balance, and how does it apply to leadership?" Catherine's mind raced. Eleanor had mentioned this law during their lessons, but only briefly. She had to answer truthfully but couldn't admit complete ignorance without undermining her position. "The law of balance," she began carefully, "teaches that power must be balanced with responsibility, strength with wisdom, tradition with progress. For leadership, it means no leader rules by strength alone, nor by bloodline alone, but by maintaining harmony between the needs of the community and the dictates of tradition." It was a generalized answer based on universal principles rather than specific knowledge, but it seemed to satisfy most of the observers. Marcus's expression tightened slightly, not the response he had hoped for. "Second question," he continued, "what is your stance on integration with humans? Would you continue your mother's controversial policies that many believe led to increased threats against our kind?" The question was a trap designed to force her to either repudiate her mother's legacy or alienate traditionalists. Catherine chose her words with extreme care. "I believe survival requires adaptation," she answered. "Complete isolation is no longer possible in the modern world, but neither is complete integration wise. The correct path lies in selective, controlled interaction that protects our community while allowing us to navigate changing realities." Murmurs of both approval and disagreement rippled through the crowd. Marcus's expression remained neutral, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. "Final question," he said, voice hardening slightly. "As someone raised human, with human values and human limitations, how can you possibly understand or represent the true spirit of wolfkind? How can you lead those whose experiences you have never shared?" The challenge was explicit now, questioning not just her knowledge but her very identity. Catherine felt anger stirring beneath her composed exterior. "I may have been raised in the human world," she replied, her voice strong and clear, "but I have studied wolves my entire life, drawn to them by instincts I couldn't then explain. I have tracked them through wilderness, observed their social structures, and felt kinship with them long before I knew why." She rose from her seat, standing tall as she continued. "I don't claim to understand all aspects of shifter life yet, but understanding comes from listening, observing, and respecting differences, skills I've honed through years of scientific work." Her gaze swept the gathering. "I stand before you not claiming leadership, but claiming heritage, not seeking power, but seeking belonging. I offer neither blind adherence to tradition nor reckless change, but a bridge between worlds that honors both parts of my ancestry. A profound silence followed her words. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a howl rose. A single voice lifted in approval of her response. Another joined, then another, until dozens of voices, human and partly shifted, created a harmonious chorus of acceptance. Marcus's face darkened with barely concealed fury. His questioning had backfired, generating sympathy and support for Catherine rather than exposing weakness. "Thank you for your thoughtful answers," Alexander said formally, effectively dismissing Marcus. "The right of questioning is fulfilled." With no further recourse, Marcus and his supporters withdrew, though the look he cast toward Catherine promised this was merely the opening skirmish in a longer campaign. The remainder of the ceremony continued without incident. When the formal proceedings concluded several hours later, Catherine's head was spinning with names, faces, and cultural information she struggled to process. Alexander had introduced her to countless community leaders, warriors, and elders, each interaction a potential alliance or challenge. As the gathering dispersed, Alexander guided her toward a quieter area away from the departing crowds. "You handled Marcus's questioning admirably," he said. "Many expected you to falter." "I nearly did," Catherine admitted, now that they had relative privacy. "That last question hit close to home. Yet your answer won many to your side." He studied her thoughtfully. "You spoke from the heart rather than calculation. The community sensed that authenticity." Catherine felt exhaustion settling into her bones. The emotional and mental strain of the ceremony, combined with the whirlwind of the past 2 days, was taking its toll. Alexander seemed to notice. "You should rest tomorrow." A commotion interrupted him. Sarah, his red-haired captain, approached rapidly, her expression tense. "Your Majesty," she said urgently, "we've received reports of a breach at the eastern boundary. Purifier activity confirmed by multiple outposts." Alexander's posture changed instantly, the ceremonial king replaced by the warrior leader. "Scale? Significant. At least 20 operatives with specialized equipment. They've neutralized 2 of our border patrols." "Mobilize the Royal Guard," Alexander ordered. "Full tactical response. Alert all boundary settlements to initiate security protocols." He turned to Catherine. "This is not coincidence. Their timing, immediately following your public introduction, suggests they've infiltrated our communication networks." "They're coming for me?" Catherine asked, though she already knew the answer. "Most likely," Alexander confirmed grimly. "The question is how they located you so quickly within our territory." "A spy," Sarah suggested. "Someone feeding information to the purifiers." "Marcus?" Catherine suggested. Alexander shook his head. "For all his faults, Marcus is loyal to our kind. He might challenge me politically, even seek to discredit you, but betraying our people to human hunters? No." "Then who?" "That," Alexander said gravely, "is what we need to discover, and quickly." He turned back to Sarah. "Assign a security detail to Catherine. Full protection, trusted personnel only. Then meet me in the command center with a full tactical assessment." Sarah nodded and departed swiftly. Alexander faced Catherine again, his expression somber. "I must address this threat immediately," he said. "The guards will escort you safely back to the palace." "I want to help," Catherine insisted. "If these purifiers are after me, I should be involved in the response." "The best help you can provide is staying safe," Alexander countered. "You're still learning our ways, our defenses. In combat conditions—" "I've worked in dangerous wildlife territories for years," Catherine interrupted. "I'm trained in wilderness survival, emergency response, and yes, firearms. I won't sit in a gilded cage while others risk their lives because of me." Alexander studied her for a long moment, something like respect flickering in his golden eyes. "Very well. You may observe in the command center, but you will follow orders without question if danger arises. Understood?" Catherine nodded, relieved not to be sidelined completely. Within the hour, she found herself in a high-tech operations center deep within the palace complex. The room buzzed with activity as personnel monitored displays showing terrain maps, security feeds, and communication channels. The contrast between the ceremonial traditionalism she'd witnessed earlier and this modern military efficiency was striking. Alexander stood at the central table reviewing tactical information with Sarah and several other military leaders. He had changed from ceremonial attire into more practical clothing that still marked him as royal, but allowed for movement. Catherine had likewise changed, gratefully abandoning the elaborate dress for clothes better suited to potential action. fitted pants, boots, and a dark blue tunic provided by the ever-efficient palace staff. Boundary sensors indicate they're using some new technology to navigate through our defensive illusions, a technician reported. They're making steady progress toward the outer settlements. Evacuation status? Alexander demanded. Underway, Sarah confirmed. Civilians moving to secure locations as per protocol. Their headings suggest knowledge of our infrastructure, another officer noted, indicating movement patterns on the display. They're bypassing decoys, heading straight for actual settlements. Alexander's expression darkened. Confirmation of internal intelligence leaks. We need to identify the source. Catherine studied the displays, her analytical mind processing patterns. May I, she asked, gesturing toward the tactical map. After a moment's hesitation, Alexander nodded. Catherine approached the display, examining the purifier's movement pattern. They're following a very specific route, she observed. See how they bypass certain areas entirely, even when those would provide better tactical advantage. Alexander looked more closely. You're right. They're avoiding something. Or following something, Catherine suggested. When I was tracking wolf packs, I noticed they often followed invisible paths through territories, routes marked by scent markers imperceptible to humans. Understanding dawned in Alexander's eyes. Trail markers. Our scouts use them to navigate efficiently through the boundary regions, markers only shifters can detect. Which means they have a shifter guide, Sarah concluded grimly, a traitor leading them directly. The implications settled heavily over the command center. A traitor from within their own ranks, actively guiding human hunters through their territory. Can you identify which scout line they're following? Alexander asked his officers. Northeastern quadrant markers, one replied after analyzing the pattern. Those routes are primarily maintained by Red Claw's Rangers, Alexander finished, his expression hardening. Marcus's personal border patrol unit. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Catherine saw the conflict in Alexander's eyes. The political implications of accusing his cousin of treason were enormous, potentially destabilizing the entire power structure. We need confirmation before making accusations, Alexander said finally. Sarah, dispatch shadow teams to track the purifiers. I want visual identification of any shifter working with them. And the settlements in their path? Catherine asked, concerned for civilian safety. Standard evacuation protocols are already activated, Sarah assured her. But if they're following the northeastern markers, their path leads eventually to Silver Falls. The sacred pools, Alexander explained to Catherine, a site of significant spiritual importance to our people, particularly to the Silver bloodline. The waters there are said to have special properties for those of royal heritage. Also the location where Luna was last seen before her disappearance, an older officer added quietly. The connection was impossible to ignore. The purifiers weren't just randomly attacking, they were heading for a location specifically connected to Catherine's mother. They're looking for something, Catherine said, the realization crystallizing. Something connected to my mother, to me, to the Silver bloodline. Or they're setting a trap, Alexander countered, using a location they know would draw you out. A communication officer interrupted urgently. Your Majesty, we're receiving a transmission. It's being broadcast on all our channels simultaneously. Source, Alexander demanded. Unknown, but it's breaking through our security protocols like they don't exist. Put it through, Alexander ordered after a moment's consideration. The main display flickered, then resolved to show the face of an older human man with cold gray eyes and military short white hair. His expression was one of clinical detachment, like a scientist observing specimens. Greetings, King Alexander, the man said, his voice precisely modulated. And to the recently returned Princess Catherine. How convenient that you've joined your mothers of people just in time for our long-planned visit. Alexander's face revealed nothing, but Catherine sensed his tension. Ezekiel Blackburn, he acknowledged. You're a long way from your laboratories and congressional backers. Some field work is too important to delegate, Ezekiel replied with a thin smile, especially when it involves specimens as valuable as the last Silver bloodline heir. Catherine felt a chill at being referred to as a specimen. Ezekiel's gaze shifted to her, his clinical assessment almost tangible, even through the screen. Remarkable resemblance to your mother, he observed. Though I see James in your features as well, such an interesting genetic combination. Royal shifter bloodline and enhanced human DNA. You're quite the scientific miracle, Catherine. What do you want? Catherine asked directly, refusing to show intimidation. Direct, like your father, Ezekiel noted with apparent approval. What I want is simple. The research Luna Silverlight was conducting before her disappearance. Research your father helped conceal for decades. I don't know what you're talking about, Catherine replied truthfully. Perhaps not consciously, Ezekiel conceded, but you have access to information through your bloodline, through the Silver Throne's ancestral memories, that could complete my work. Alexander stepped forward. Whatever you believe Catherine knows, she was raised human, unaware of her heritage until days ago. She cannot possibly have the information you seek. On the contrary, Ezekiel countered, the Silver Bloodline's connection to ancestral memory is well documented in the research we acquired from your archives over the years. Knowledge passed through blood, accessible at sacred sites, particularly to those with dual heritage. He leaned closer to the camera. Silver Falls would be an ideal location for such memories to surface, wouldn't you agree? Especially under certain conditions of stress or heightened emotion. The implication was clear. The purifiers were deliberately heading towards Silver Falls to draw Catherine there, believing she could access information through some genetic memory triggered by the location. If you want me, Catherine said firmly, then leave their settlements alone. This is between us. Catherine, Alexander warned quietly. She ignored him. Name your terms, Dr. Blackburn. A meeting, an exchange, me for the safety of the innocent people in your path. Ezekiel's expression showed satisfaction. Noble like both your parents. I accept your offer in principle, but with conditions. Come to Silver Falls at dawn. Bring no more than 2 companions. In exchange, my teams will avoid the civilian settlements. And if we refuse, Alexander demanded, then we continue as planned, Ezekiel replied coldly, with significantly less concern for collateral damage. You have until dawn to decide. The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the command center in tense silence. It's an obvious trap, Sarah stated what everyone was thinking. Of course it is, Alexander agreed. But it also confirms they're after Catherine specifically, not just general intelligence or territorial advantage. Catherine processed the interaction, mind racing. He believes I can access some information my mother had, something valuable enough to mount this operation. Luna was researching ancient bloodline properties before she disappeared, Gabriel Silverstone confirmed, having joined them during the transmission, particularly the Silver Bloodline's unique abilities. It was considered controversial, even among our own scholars. What abilities? Catherine asked. Gabriel hesitated, glancing at Alexander, who nodded permission. The Silver Bloodline has always had unusual gifts, even among shifters. Enhanced healing, yes, but also ancestral memory. The ability to access knowledge and experiences from bloodline ancestors under certain conditions. Like at Silver Falls, Catherine surmised. Precisely. The waters there are said to facilitate the connection, especially during significant moon phases. Alexander's expression was troubled. If Blackburn believes Catherine can access this information, he must have learned about it from someone with intimate knowledge of Silver Bloodline secrets. Luna herself, Catherine suggested? Could she have been working with him? Never, Gabriel refuted firmly, but she might have been captured at some point, forced to reveal information under duress. The implications hung heavy in the air, that Luna might still be alive, a prisoner of the purifiers for 25 years. We need more information before making any decisions, Alexander declared. Sarah, continue monitoring the purifiers' movements. Gabriel, gather everything we have on Luna's research and Silver Bloodline abilities. Catherine. He turned to her, his expression softening slightly. You should rest. This is not your burden to bear alone. It became my burden the moment I crossed your boundary, Catherine countered. These purifiers have been hunting me my entire life, whether I knew it or not. They killed James, my father. If there's even a chance my mother is still alive, still their prisoner. Alexander studied her, something like understanding in his golden eyes. We will find the truth together. But rushing blindly into Blackburn's trap serves no one. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Catherine refused to retire to her chambers, instead working alongside Gabriel to review everything available about Luna's research and the Silver Bloodline abilities. The information was fragmented, much apparently lost or deliberately obscured over the years. Luna was researching something specific in the months before her disappearance, Gabriel explained, showing Catherine ancient texts alongside her mother's modern research notes. Something about the dual nature of shifters, the balance between human and wolf forms, and how that balance affects our abilities and limitations. Was she trying to enhance shifting abilities, Catherine asked? Make them stronger somehow? Perhaps, Gabriel said thoughtfully. Or perhaps she was exploring something more fundamental, the actual origin of our dual nature and how it might be better understood or controlled. Catherine studied the notes, recognizing scientific methodology beneath the unfamiliar terminology. She was approaching this systematically, scientifically, not just as mystical lore, but as biological reality. That was Luna's gift, Gabriel agreed. She bridged our traditional knowledge with modern scientific understanding. It made her work both revolutionary and controversial. As midnight approached, Alexander called a strategy meeting with his inner circle. Catherine joined them, still processing the information she'd reviewed with Gabriel. The purifiers have established a perimeter around Silver Falls, Sarah reported. Approximately 30 operatives with advanced equipment. They've set up what appears to be a research station near the main pool. Any sign of shifter collaborators, Alexander asked? None visually confirmed yet, but they're navigating our territory too effectively for humans alone. Alexander turned to Catherine. Blackburn believes you can access information through ancestral memory at the falls. Gabriel's research suggests this might be possible, though unpredictable. The question is whether we risk engaging on his terms. What about a two-pronged approach? Catherine suggested. I meet with Blackburn as agreed with minimal escort. Meanwhile, your force is positioned for strategic intervention if needed. Too dangerous, Alexander dismissed immediately. Blackburn is ruthless and calculating. He would anticipate such a tactic. But he also wants me alive and cooperative, Catherine countered. He needs me to access whatever information he's seeking. That gives us leverage. The discussion continued. Strategies proposed and rejected. Risks weighed against potential gains. Throughout it all, Catherine felt a growing certainty that she needed to face Blackburn directly. Not just for tactical reasons, but for personal ones. This man had potentially held her mother prisoner for decades, had ordered her father's death, had shaped her life from the shadows without her knowledge. As the meeting concluded without firm resolution, Alexander asked Catherine to remain behind. When they were alone, he studied her with unusual intensity. You intend to meet Blackburn regardless of what we decide, he stated rather than asked. Catherine didn't bother denying it. I need answers. About my mother, about myself. Blackburn has those answers. At what cost? Alexander challenged. Your freedom, your life, the safety of our people? I don't plan to surrender, Catherine clarified, but I do plan to face him. Alexander's expression shifted to something Catherine couldn't quite identify. Concern, certainly, but something more complex beneath it. When I found you in that storm, he said quietly, I was tracking rumors of a silver bloodline descendant. I expected to find someone who might help stabilize our political situation, someone with a useful heritage. I did not expect to find, he trailed off, seemingly unsure how to continue. Find what? Catherine prompted. Someone so like her, he finished. Not just in appearance, but in spirit. Luna faced challenges with the same direct courage, the same disregard for personal safety when others were at risk. The comparison to her mother struck Catherine deeply. You cared for her, she realized aloud, not just as a political ally. She was to be my mate, Alexander acknowledged, a rare vulnerability in his usually guarded expression, an arranged match that grew into genuine respect and affection. When she disappeared, I lost not just a political partner, but a future I had come to value. The admission humanized him in a way nothing else had. Behind the stern king, the powerful alpha, was a man who had experienced profound loss and carried that burden for 25 years. I'm not my mother, Catherine said gently. I can't be what she was to you or to your people. I know that, Alexander replied. Yet you carry her spirit, her determination. And that makes me all the more resolved to protect you from Blackburn's machinations. He moved closer, his presence somehow both intimidating and reassuring. We will face Blackburn together, Catherine. Not as king and subject, not as protector and protected, but as equals with a common purpose, as your mother and I once stood. The offer of partnership rather than protection surprised her. Why risk yourself? Your people need their king. Because some battles define us, he answered simply, and because I failed to protect Luna, I will not fail her daughter. The raw honesty in his words created a moment of connection between them that transcended their brief acquaintance. Catherine felt that strange resonance again, the inexplicable link that had formed when they first touched. Dawn approaches in a few hours, Alexander said, breaking the moment. We should prepare if we're to meet Blackburn on our terms rather than his. As they left the command center together, Catherine felt a subtle shift in their relationship. from reluctant allies to something approaching genuine partnership. Whatever awaited them at Silver Falls, they would face it not as king and unexpected heir, but as two individuals united by shared purpose and the shadow of a woman they had both loved in different ways. The wolf within her stirred again, responding to this new understanding, this deepening connection to her mother's world and the man who had once been destined to share it with her. For the first time since crossing the boundary, Catherine felt not just acceptance of her dual heritage, but the beginning of true belonging. Dawn approached, bringing with it the confrontation that would determine not just her fate, but the future of two worlds now inextricably linked in her divided blood. Silver Falls emerged from the pre-dawn mist like a vision from ancient legend. Massive stone formations surrounded a series of cascading pools, their waters glowing with an ethereal blue-silver light even in the dim transition between night and day. Steam rose from the surface, creating an otherworldly atmosphere as Catherine, Alexander, and Sarah approached the sacred site. They had traveled mostly in silence, each focused on the confrontation ahead. Catherine had insisted on Sarah as their third companion, trusting the captain's combat skills and evident loyalty to Alexander. Though other Royal Guard members had positioned themselves strategically around the perimeter of the sacred site, only the three of them would approach Blackburn directly, honoring the terms of the meeting while maintaining some tactical advantage. Catherine wore practical clothing suitable for potential combat, dark pants and boots, a fitted jacket that allowed free movement. Her mother's medallion prominently displayed at her throat. Alexander likewise was dressed for functionality rather than ceremony, though his bearing remained undeniably regal. Sarah moved with the controlled precision of an experienced warrior, her senses constantly scanning for threats. "They're already here," Sarah murmured, indicating subtle signs of disturbance around the main pool. "Multiple positions covering the primary approach." Alexander nodded. "As expected, Catherine, stay between us. If the situation deteriorates, follow Sarah's lead for extraction." Catherine acknowledged the instruction but remained focused on the scene before her. Despite the tension of their mission, she couldn't help feeling a profound connection to this place. The air itself seemed charged with ancient energy that resonated with something deep within her blood. "The waters call to you," Alexander observed quietly, noting her expression. "The silver bloodline has always had special affinity for this place." "It feels familiar," Catherine admitted, "like somewhere I've visited in dreams." "Ancestral memory," Alexander explained, "the very phenomenon Blackburn seeks to exploit. Be cautious of what you feel here. Impressions from the past can be disorienting, especially for someone untrained in managing them." They approached the largest pool, where the waters formed a perfect circle surrounded by stone markers inscribed with ancient symbols. As they drew closer, figures emerged from concealed positions around the site, purifiers in tactical gear, weapons at the ready, but not yet aimed directly at them. Ezekiel Blackburn stood at the far edge of the main pool, his military posture unmistakable even at a distance. Beside him stood a younger man with similar bearing, likely his son or protege, and a third figure whose presence made Catherine's breath catch. The woman was frail, clearly weakened by age or hardship, with silver-white hair hanging limply around a gaunt face. Yet even diminished, her resemblance to Catherine was unmistakable. The same storm-gray eyes, the same refined features, though now lined with suffering. "Mother," Catherine whispered, the word emerging unbidden. Alexander stiffened beside her, his golden eyes widening with recognition and disbelief. "Luna," he breathed, his voice containing decades of emotion in that single word. "A touching reunion," Blackburn called across the water, his clinical tone incongruous with the emotional weight of the moment. "Though perhaps premature, we haven't quite finished our negotiations." Catherine struggled to tear her gaze from the woman who could only be her mother. Luna Silverlight, alive after 25 years, held captive by the purifiers all this time. The revelation sent shockwaves through her system, clouding logical thought with raw emotion. "Steady," Alexander murmured, his hand briefly touching her arm in grounding reassurance. "Focus on the immediate threat. Emotion is what he wants from you here." With supreme effort, Catherine composed herself, channeling years of scientific discipline to compartmentalize her feelings. "Mr. Blackburn," she acknowledged, her voice remarkably steady, "I see you brought leverage to our meeting." "Insurance," Blackburn corrected with clinical precision. "Luna has been a valuable research subject for many years. Her cooperation has been inconsistent, but productive nonetheless." "Release her," Alexander commanded, authority radiating from him despite being outnumbered. She has suffered enough for your twisted science. Science is neither twisted nor benevolent, Your Majesty, merely revealing of truth. Blackburn gestured toward Catherine. And the truth I seek now requires Luna's daughter, the culmination of genetic potential from both worlds. Catherine studied this situation with forced detachment, approximately 15 purifiers visible, likely more concealed. Blackburn and his apparent son positioned strategically. Luna clearly too weak to assist in any escape. The Royal Guard members positioned in the surrounding forest would be outnumbered in a direct confrontation. What exactly do you want from me? Catherine asked, buying time while she assessed options. Access, Blackburn replied simply, to the ancestral memories locked within your unique genetic structure. Luna's research suggested that a hybrid of royal shifter blood and enhanced human DNA might unlock evolutionary memories beyond what pure bloodlines can access. Enhanced human DNA? Catherine questioned, latching onto the unfamiliar term. A thin smile crossed Blackburn's face. James Silverlight wasn't just any human, Catherine. He was part of a military program decades ago. Genetic modifications for enhanced strength, healing, and sensory perception. Not shifter abilities, but as close as human science could approach. The revelation staggered Catherine. James had never mentioned any military enhancements, yet it explained his exceptional tracking skills, his uncanny resilience, his ability to move through wilderness with almost supernatural awareness. The combination of Luna's royal shifter genetics with James's enhanced human DNA created something unprecedented, Blackburn continued. A bridge between species with the potential to access evolutionary memory beyond ordinary limitations. And if I refuse to cooperate, Catherine challenged, then Luna's usefulness ends, Blackburn stated matter-of-factly, and we explore alternatives with less voluntary subjects. The threat was clear. Cooperate or watch her mother die, followed by attacks on other shifters. Catherine felt cold fury building within her, alongside something else, a stirring of primal power responding to the threat against her newfound family. There's something you've miscalculated, Doctor, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous register. You assume I can control whatever access I might have to these ancestral memories, that I can simply retrieve information on command. We have methods to facilitate the process, Blackburn assured her, gesturing toward equipment set up near the pool. The waters here, combined with certain compounds we've developed from Luna's blood samples, should create optimal conditions. Catherine took a measured step forward, ignoring Alexander's warning glance. And what information are you so desperate to obtain? What knowledge could possibly justify 25 years of torturing my mother? For the first time, Blackburn's clinical detachment wavered. The origin point, he said, a hint of fervor entering his voice. The evolutionary divergence that created shifters as a separate branch from humanity. Luna was researching it before her disappearance. The biological mechanism that allows transformation between forms. The genetic key that unlocks dual nature. To what end? Alexander demanded. Why pursue this knowledge so ruthlessly? Control, Blackburn's son spoke for the first time, his voice younger but carrying the same clinical detachment as his father's. Shifters represent an evolutionary adaptation that could revolutionize human capability if properly understood and harnessed. Or weaponized, Catherine concluded grimly. You want to create artificial shifters under your control. Super soldiers who transform at command rather than by natural ability. Among other applications, Blackburn acknowledged, military, medical, biological, the potential is limitless. Throughout this exchange, Catherine had been keenly aware of the waters beside them, their silver-blue glow intensifying as dawn approached. She felt an inexplicable pull toward them, as if the pools themselves were calling to her blood. The sun rises, Blackburn observed, checking his watch with military precision. Optimal conditions approach. You have a choice, Catherine. Cooperate willingly or watch your mother suffer while we take what we need by force. In that moment of decision, several things happened simultaneously. Luna, who had remained silent and seemingly passive, suddenly lifted her head and locked eyes with Catherine. A message passed between them without words, something primal and instinctive, mother to daughter. Trust your blood, trust the water, trust yourself. Alexander shifted subtly closer to Catherine, his presence solid and reassuring at her side. Whatever you decide, he said quietly, I stand with you. And within Catherine herself, The dormant wolf that had been stirring since her arrival in the Northern Territory surged toward consciousness, responding to the threat, to the sacred location, to the presence of her blood kin and the call of the ancient waters. "I'll cooperate," she announced, her decision crystallizing. "But I set the terms. I enter the waters alone. No equipment, no compounds, no interference. The ancestral memories respond to bloodline and intention, not technology." Blackburn frowned, clearly displeased with this deviation from his planned procedure. "Unacceptable. We need to monitor and record." "Those are my terms," Catherine interrupted firmly. "The knowledge you seek isn't data to be downloaded. It's experience to be lived. I'll share what I learn if it deems me worthy, but the process must follow ancient protocols." She was bluffing, of course, inventing ancient protocols based on intuition and fragments gathered from Gabriel's lessons. Yet something deep within her blood assured her this was the correct approach, that the waters needed to be experienced directly, without technological interference. Blackburn conferred briefly with his son, their voices too low to overhear. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. "Very well, but you remain within our perimeter, and Luna stays under our control until you produce results." "Agreed," Catherine said before Alexander could object. She turned to him, meeting his concerned gaze. "Trust me," she said quietly. "I feel my mother's guidance. The waters are calling to me." Alexander studied her face intently, then inclined his head in acceptance of her decision. "Be careful," he murmured. "Waters of power respond to emotion as much as intention. Center yourself before you enter." Catherine approached the main pool slowly, feeling the energy intensify with each step. The rising sun sent its first rays across the eastern horizon, striking the water's surface and igniting it with brilliant silver light. Steam rose more thickly now, creating a mystical boundary between the pool and the tension surrounding it. At the water's edge, Catherine removed her boots and jacket, keeping only essential clothing and her mother's medallion. She was acutely aware of all eyes upon her: Blackburn's clinical assessment, Alexander's concerned vigilance, Luna's knowing gaze, Sarah's tactical awareness of the surrounding threats. Taking a deep breath, Catherine stepped into the pool. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The water felt both cool and warm simultaneously, embracing her skin with gentle electricity that traveled through her body like quicksilver. She waded deeper, the water rising to her knees, then her waist, its silver-blue luminescence swirling around her. When she reached the center of the pool, Catherine submerged herself completely, surrendering to whatever wisdom the waters might reveal. Darkness enveloped her momentarily, then shattered into prismatic light as ancestral memories cascaded through her consciousness. Not linear recollections, but fragments, impressions, knowledge carried in blood rather than mind. A woman with silver hair standing before ancient stone markers, channeling moonlight through crystalline waters. Wolves running through primeval forests, their forms shifting between animal and human with fluid grace. Ceremonies conducted under full moons. Blood offerings given willingly to sacred pools. And deeper, more ancient still, the origin point Blackburn sought, the evolutionary divergence where one species became two. A cataclysm of fire and ice, the world in chaos. Survivors sheltering in caves near thermal waters infused with minerals from deep within the earth. Desperate humans drinking from pools charged with moonlight and strange energies, their bodies transforming to survive the harsh conditions. The first shifters, born of necessity and adaptation rather than design. The knowledge flowed into Catherine like a river finding its course, filling spaces within her that she hadn't known were empty. This was her heritage, her birthright, not just royal status or political position, but connection to an ancient lineage that had walked between worlds since the dawn of humanity. And with this inheritance came understanding of her own unique nature. Not half shifter, half human as she had assumed, but something altogether new. The convergence of royal shifter bloodline and enhanced human genetics had created potential beyond either heritage alone. The ability to bridge not just forms but worlds, to unite divided paths into harmony. As this revelation crystallized in her mind, Catherine felt her body responding to the ancient waters, to the knowledge flowing through her blood. The transformation she had sensed building since crossing the boundary finally manifested, not as violent change but as natural evolution. Her cells reconfigured, muscles and bones restructuring with painless fluidity. Her senses sharpened beyond anything she had experienced, perception expanding to encompass nuances of scent, sound, and energy previously inaccessible. The wolf emerged from within, not replacing her human consciousness, but merging with it in perfect balance. Not half of each, but wholly both simultaneously, the true gift of her dual heritage. When Catherine broke the surface of the pool moments later, she was no longer merely human in shifter form. She emerged as something unique in the history of both species. A silver-white wolf with eyes that glowed with internal light, her fur patterned with luminescent markings that matched the ancient symbols surrounding the pools. Gasps arose from all witnesses. Even Blackburn's clinical detachment shattered at the sight of her transformed state. "Impossible," he whispered, scientific certainty giving way to awe. "The convergence is complete." Alexander stared in wonder, recognition dawning in his golden eyes. "The Argent Wolf," he said reverently, "the prophecy fulfilled." Catherine, the wolf, the convergence of bloodlines, padded from the pool with fluid grace, water streaming from her silver fur in luminescent rivulets. Her consciousness remained fully aware. Human intellect united with wolf instinct in perfect harmony. She understood now what Luna had discovered, what Blackburn sought, what Alexander had protected. The secret was not merely biological transformation, but spiritual transcendence, the ability to exist in harmony with dual nature rather than divided between forms. As she approached the edge of the pool, Catherine focused her newfound awareness on Blackburn and his son. Their sense revealed layers of motivation beyond their clinical facades: ambition, fear, obsession, and beneath it all, a fundamental misunderstanding of the very power they sought to control. With deliberate calm, Catherine shifted back to human form, the transformation flowing naturally rather than wrenched by will. She stood before them, clothed somehow in a simple white garment manifested during the transformation, the medallion at her throat glowing with the same light as the pools. "I have seen what you seek," she said, her voice carrying new authority. "The origin of shifters, the biological mechanisms of transformation, the genetic codes you hope to exploit." Blackburn stepped forward eagerly. "Tell me, show me your findings." "I will share one truth," Catherine replied, power resonating in her words. "The ability you seek cannot be replicated through technology or forced adaptation. Transformation is not merely physical, but spiritual, a harmony of dual nature that can only manifest through balance freely chosen, never through coercion or control." Frustration contorted Blackburn's features. Metaphysical nonsense. The transformation must have a quantifiable biological basis: genes, proteins, neural pathways that can be isolated and replicated. "The biology exists," Catherine acknowledged, "but without the spiritual component, you would create only monsters, beings trapped between forms, divided against themselves, suffering endless torment." She gestured toward Luna. "This is what my mother discovered, why she fled your reach, not to hide the knowledge, but to prevent its misuse. The price of forced transformation is spiritual destruction, a fate she wouldn't inflict even on enemies." Blackburn's son stepped forward, hand moving toward his weapon. "We didn't come this far for philosophy. If you won't share the practical knowledge, we'll take tissue samples and continue our research with or without your cooperation." What happened next occurred with such speed that human perception could barely track it. Alexander transformed in a blur of motion, becoming the massive black wolf with silver-streaked spine. Sarah likewise shifted to her russet wolf form. Simultaneously, Royal Guard members concealed in the surrounding forest emerged as wolves, closing the perimeter around the purifiers. Catherine remained human, stepping toward Luna with determined focus. "Release my mother," she commanded Blackburn. "Your research ends today." "You're still outnumbered and outgunned," Blackburn countered, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. "Silver bullets will drop shifters regardless of their spiritual balance." "Perhaps," Catherine acknowledged, "but can your weapons affect this?" She raised her hands, and the waters of all the pools responded, rising in spiraling columns that defied gravity and natural law. The liquid tendrils moved with apparent consciousness, forming a protective barrier around Catherine, Luna, Alexander, and Sarah. Blackburn stared in disbelief. "Hydrokinesis? That's not a documented shifter ability." "Not shifter," Catherine corrected. "Silver bloodline. The waters recognize their own, just as the wolf recognizes pack. This is the power my mother protected from you. Not transformation alone, but communion with primal elements. The bridge between natural forces and conscious will." Luna's eyes shone with pride despite her weakened condition. For the first time she spoke, her voice thin but carrying surprising strength. The convergence is complete. The bridge between worlds stands before you, Ezekiel. Not a weapon to be wielded, but a balance to be respected. Blackburn's scientific certainty visibly crumbled as he witnessed phenomena his research had never predicted. His son, however, responded with typical military training. When faced with an unknown threat, eliminate it. He raised his weapon, aiming directly at Catherine. Several things happened simultaneously. Luna, summoning strength from some hidden reserve, threw herself forward to shield her daughter. Alexander lunged toward the attacker, a blur of black fur and focused rage. And Catherine, acting on instinct rather than conscious thought, directed the water barrier to intercept the threat. The gunshot echoed across the sacred site. The water barrier solidified instantly, catching the bullet before it could reach its target. Alexander's massive form collided with Blackburn's son, sending both sprawling to the ground, the weapon flying from his grip. Chaos erupted as purifiers raised weapons and shifter guards responded with coordinated attacks. Sarah moved to protect Catherine and Luna, her russet fur bristling as she positioned herself between them and the nearest threats. Enough! Catherine's voice carried supernatural authority, halting the escalating violence momentarily. The waters around them pulsed with energy, responding to her command, forming a protective dome over the central pool area. Within this sanctuary of water and light, Catherine knelt beside Luna, supporting her mother's frail form. "I found you," she whispered, emotion finally breaking through her composed exterior. "After all these years." Luna reached up with trembling fingers to touch Catherine's face. "My beautiful daughter, I knew you would come. I knew you would fulfill your destiny. We need to get you to safety, to healers," Catherine said urgently, noting her mother's weakness. "There's no time," Luna replied, her voice fading. "Blackburn's experiments have taken their toll. I've held on through sheer will, waiting for this moment." Beyond their water barrier, the standoff continued. Alexander, back in human form, held Blackburn's son pinned and disarmed. Blackburn himself stood surrounded by royal guards in wolf form, his clinical detachment replaced by genuine fear as he witnessed powers beyond his scientific understanding. "Listen carefully, Catherine," Luna continued, her strength visibly ebbing. "What you experienced in the waters, the knowledge, the transformation, the communion with elemental forces, is only the beginning. The silver bloodline carries responsibilities beyond political leadership." "Tell me," Catherine urged, sensing precious time slipping away. "We are guardians of the balance," Luna explained, each word clearly an effort. "Not just between human and wolf forms, but between worlds themselves. The boundary exists because we maintain it, protecting both realms from forces that would consume them." She grasped Catherine's hand with surprising strength. This is what Blackburn could never understand. The knowledge he sought would disrupt the balance, allowing entities from beyond to enter our world, beings that feed on discord and division. Catherine thought of the primordial memories she had glimpsed in the waters, not just of shifter origins, but of ancient pacts made to protect both species from extra-dimensional threats, guardianships established and maintained through bloodline commitments. "The convergence of your dual heritage has awakened the guardian potential to its fullest," Luna continued. "Alexander has protected the physical boundaries for decades. Now you must protect the metaphysical ones." "I don't understand fully," Catherine admitted. "How do I trust your instincts? Trust the blood. Trust Alexander. He knows more than he has revealed." Luna's eyes drifted toward the Wolf King, who had returned to the central pool area, his expression grave as he watched their reunion. "He has honored his promise to me all these years," Luna said with evident gratitude. "Protecting our people, preserving my research from those who would misuse it, searching for you when rumors surfaced." Catherine followed her gaze to Alexander, and seeing him in yet another light, not just as king, not just his potential ally, but as the faithful guardian who had kept faith with her mother through decades of uncertainty and loss. "The silver throne is yours by birthright," Luna told Catherine, her voice weakening further. "But more important than title is purpose. You are the bridge, Catherine, the union of worlds, the healing of ancient divisions." With visible effort, Luna removed a ring from her finger, a band of intricately worked silver set with a moonstone that seemed to glow from within. "Take this. It is the signet of the guardian passed through our bloodline for generations. It will help focus your abilities as they continue to develop." Catherine accepted the ring, feeling its ancient power resonate with her transformed essence. Mother, please hold on. We can get you to healers, to safety. Luna smiled with serene acceptance. My journey ends here at Silver Falls where it began, but yours continues. She looked past Catherine to Alexander, who had approached silently. Take care of her. Teach her. Stand beside her as you once stood beside me. I swear it, Alexander promised solemnly, kneeling beside them. By moon and blood. Luna's smile deepened. I knew you would find each other. The balance requires it. Her gaze returned to Catherine's, her love shining through her exhaustion. I have waited 25 years to see the woman you would become. You are more than I dared hope for, my daughter. With those words, Luna Silverlight closed her eyes, her body relaxing as her spirit finally released the burden it had carried for so long. She passed peacefully, in her daughter's arms, at the sacred site that had defined her bloodline for generations. Catherine felt the moment her mother's spirit departed, not as absence but as transfer, the last essence of Luna's power and knowledge flowing into her daughter through their clasped hands, through blood connection, through the waters of Silver Falls that surrounded them. Grief and power surged through Catherine simultaneously. The water barrier around them responded, pulsing with energy that reflected her emotional state. For a moment, it seemed the very elements might shatter under the force of her pain. Then Alexander's hand covered hers where it still held Luna's. Breathe, he instructed quietly. Center yourself. Honor her passing by maintaining the balance she protected. His touch anchored her, providing stability as the storm of emotion threatened to overwhelm her newfound abilities. Catherine closed her eyes, focusing on breath, on balance, on the responsibility now fully transferred to her. When she opened her eyes again, determination had replaced raw grief. She gently laid Luna's body beside the sacred pool, arranging her mother's hands peacefully across her chest, the posture of a warrior at rest. Standing, Catherine faced the barrier she had created, beyond which Blackburn and his purifiers remained contained by Alexander's guards. With a gesture, she thinned the water barrier enough for sound to pass through. Ezekiel Blackburn, she called, her voice carrying authority beyond her years. Your research ends today. Your prisoner is beyond your reach. Your understanding is fundamentally flawed. Blackburn stared at her with a mixture of scientific fascination and genuine fear. What are you, he asked, the question stripped of clinical detachment, revealing the awe of a man confronting forces beyond his comprehension. I am what you sought to create through artificial means, Catherine answered. The convergence of worlds, the balance of forms, not through coercion or experimentation, but through natural evolution and willing acceptance. She approached the thin barrier, studying the man who had shaped so much of her family's fate. You will leave the Northern Territories and never return. Your research data will be surrendered. Your test subjects freed. Your operations dismantled. Or what? Blackburn challenged, though the question lacked conviction. In answer, Catherine shifted partially, not to wolf form, but to something between, her eyes glowing with inner light, her hands transforming to show lethal claws, her voice resonating with dual nature. Or I will show you exactly what happens when the balance is disrupted, she said, allowing him to glimpse, just for a moment, the ancient forces she could now access. Powers that could tear the veil between dimensions, that could reshape reality itself within limited domains. Fear replaced the last vestiges of scientific curiosity in Blackburn's expression. He had sought to control transformation through technology and force. The reality, spiritual as much as physical, chosen rather than coerced, was far beyond his ability to harness. Your son will remain with us as assurance of your compliance, Alexander declared. His tone brooking no argument. When your operations are confirmed dismantled, he will be returned unharmed. Blackburn looked to his captured son, then back to Catherine and Alexander. Calculation warred with fear in his expression before he finally nodded in reluctant acceptance. A tactical retreat, he acknowledged. But this isn't over. The world is changing. The boundary weakens with each passing year. Technology advances, eventually the existence of shifters will become known to humanity at large. Perhaps, Catherine conceded, but that revelation will come through cooperation and mutual understanding, not through weaponization and control. The balance will be maintained with or without your acceptance. With Alexander's command, Royal Guard members escorted Blackburn and most of his team away from Silver Falls, leaving only the captive son in a small security detail. The sacred site gradually returned to its natural serenity, though the waters continued to glow with heightened intensity in Catherine's presence. When they were relatively alone, Catherine knelt again beside her mother's body, grief returning now that immediate threats had been addressed. She held on through sheer force of will, Alexander said quietly, joining her. Waiting for you, protecting the knowledge until the rightful guardian could receive it. I have so many questions, Catherine said, her voice thick with emotion. So much I wanted to ask her, to learn from her. She gave you what you need most, Alexander assured her. The rest will come in time, through the waters, through ancestral memory, through the ring she entrusted to you. Catherine studied the silver signet ring in her palm, feeling its ancient power resonating with her transformed essence. Guardian of the balance, she murmured, a responsibility I never imagined. One you were born to fulfill, Alexander said with certainty. The convergence of bloodlines, the bridge between worlds. Luna foresaw this possibility decades ago. It's why she chose James, why she protected you in the human world until you were ready. He hesitated, then added, it's also why our paths were destined to cross, the guardian and the protector, complementary roles in maintaining the balance. Catherine looked up at him, seeing beyond the stern king to the man beneath, a man who had carried tremendous responsibility alone for decades, who had kept faith with her mother's memory, who had recognized Catherine's potential before she knew it herself. What happens now, she asked. We honor Luna with proper ceremonies, Alexander replied. Then we address the council regarding Blackburn's defeat and the future of our territories. He paused, studying her with those intense golden eyes. And then, Catherine Silverlight, you decide your path. The silver throne is yours by birthright, should you choose to claim it. The guardian role is yours regardless, but how you fulfill these responsibilities, that remains your choice. Catherine gazed across Silver Falls, the sacred waters now calm in the full morning light. Choice. The word resonated with everything she had learned in the waters. Transformation freely chosen, balance willingly maintained, responsibilities accepted rather than imposed. I need time, she said finally, to grieve, to learn, to understand fully what I've become. You shall have it, Alexander promised. The Northern Territories have waited 25 years for the Silver Bloodline's return. We can wait longer for its full restoration. Together, they carried Luna's body from Silver Falls, royal guards forming a solemn honor guard as they departed the sacred site. Catherine felt the waters recede behind her, returning to their natural state, yet forever changed by her awakening within them, just as she had been changed by their ancient power. 3 days of mourning followed, observed throughout the Northern Territories with ceremonies that honored Luna Silverlight's life and sacrifice. Catherine learned the funeral traditions of her mother's people, finding comfort in rituals that somehow felt familiar despite her human upbringing. On the third night, Luna's body was returned to Silver Falls for the final ceremony. Under the light of the waning moon, Alexander performed the ancient rites as Catherine stood beside him, now wearing the silver signet ring that marked her as guardian. We return Luna Silverlight to the waters of her ancestors, Alexander intoned, his deep voice carrying across the gathered assembly of council members and close allies. Her body to the sacred pools, her spirit to the moon goddess, her legacy to her daughter who stands before you. Catherine stepped forward at the appropriate moment, placing the ceremonial flowers around her mother's body, which had been arranged on a platform of silver-white wood carved with ancient symbols. Mother of my blood, guardian before me. She spoke the ritual words Gabriel had taught her, her voice steady despite her grief. Your watch has ended. Your burden passes to me. May your spirit find peace in the eternal hunt beyond the silver veil. 4 royal guards lifted the platform and carried it to the central pool, where they lowered it gently into the glowing waters. As Luna's body descended, the waters embraced her with luminescent tendrils, drawing her deeper until she vanished from sight. In her place, silver light expanded outward in concentric rings, transforming the pool's surface into a mirror of the night sky above. The guardian returns to the stars, Alexander concluded solemnly. Her light joins those who came before, guiding those who follow. The ceremony complete, the assembly dispersed gradually, leaving Catherine and Alexander alone at the pool's edge. For long moments they stood in companionable silence, watching the waters gradually return to their normal state. I felt her, Catherine said finally. Not gone, but transformed. Part of the waters now, part of the boundary itself. Alexander nodded. The guardians never truly leave us. Their essence becomes part of what they protected in life. He turned to face her directly. The council meets tomorrow to address recent events and future governance. They will expect some declaration of your intentions. Catherine sighed, the weight of decision heavy upon her. What would you advise? That you follow your instincts, Alexander replied without hesitation. They've served you well thus far. She studied him in the moonlight, this complex man who had become so central to her new reality in such a short time. And what of your position, your authority? If I claim the silver throne, then we rule together as was always intended, Alexander said simply. Not as rivals for power, but as partners in maintaining the balance your mother's vision finally fulfilled. The directness of his answer surprised her. Just like that? You would share authority you've held alone for 25 years? A rare smile softened his stern features. Catherine, I never wanted to rule alone. The burden was accepted out of necessity, not ambition. To share it with Luna's daughter, the true guardian. He shook his head slightly. It would not be sacrifice, but fulfillment. Catherine turned back to the waters, considering his words and the future they suggested. I'm still half human, she reminded him. Part of me belongs to that world, to the life I built there. The bridge belongs to both worlds, Alexander countered gently. That is your unique strength, not a limitation. You need not abandon one to embrace the other. His wisdom resonated with what she had experienced in the waters, not division between forms or worlds, but harmony, balance, integration. The realization of both heritages simultaneously rather than alternating between them. I need to return briefly, she decided, to settle my affairs in the human world, to honor James properly now that I understand his sacrifice, to gather research that might help us strengthen the boundary. A wise approach, Alexander approved. The council will accept a period of transition if your ultimate intention is to return and take your rightful place. Catherine nodded, decision crystallizing. Then that is what I'll tell them. Not abdication, not immediate assumption of authority, but commitment to preparation for the responsibilities that are rightfully mine. Alexander's golden eyes reflected approval and something deeper. Respect, partnership, potential for more than political alliance. And when you return, he asked, the question containing layers of meaning beyond governance. Catherine met his gaze steadily. When I return, Alexander Blackwood, we will fulfill the destiny our bloodlines have always intended, not just as rulers, but as guardians who stand together in perfect balance. The promise encompassed governance, protection of their people, maintenance of the boundary, and perhaps, in time, the personal connection that had begun forming between them, the resonance that went beyond political expedience or shared purpose. The council meeting the following day proceeded much as Catherine had anticipated. She declared her intentions formally, claiming her birthright as silver bloodline heir, while requesting time to properly prepare for full assumption of responsibilities. The announcement of temporary shared regency between Alexander and herself during the transition period satisfied most factions. Even Marcus Redclaw offered reluctant acknowledgement of her bloodline rights, though Catherine harbored no illusions about his continued opposition. Political realities didn't vanish with one ceremony or confrontation, no matter how dramatic. The capture of Blackburn's son provided valuable intelligence about purifier operations, allowing Northern security forces to dismantle several hidden outposts along the boundary. While Blackburn himself remained at large in the human world, his immediate threat had been neutralized. 1 week after Luna's funeral, Catherine prepared for her temporary return to the human world. Alexander arranged for trusted escorts and established secure communication protocols to maintain contact during her absence. On the morning of her departure, he met her in the palace gardens, away from the formality of court and council. How long will you need, he asked, practical even in personal matters. A month, perhaps 2, Catherine replied. Enough time to conclude my research properly, to ensure James receives appropriate honors, to prepare the human side of my existence for extended absence. Alexander nodded, accepting her timeline without question. The boundary will be strongest at the next full moon. Return then if you can. I'll meet you at the crossing point. Catherine studied him in the morning light, this powerful alpha who had become so integral to her new life in such a short time. In his golden eyes, she saw not just the stern king or protective warrior, but the man beneath. Complex, honorable, carrying burdens few could comprehend. I will return, she promised, the words carrying weight beyond mere scheduling. What began here isn't finished, Alexander. The balance requires both of us. Understanding passed between them, acknowledgement of the connection forming between them, deeper than political alliance, stronger than mere circumstance. Not love yet, perhaps, but the foundation for it. Respect, shared purpose, growing trust, and the resonance of bloodlines meant to complement each other. Alexander reached out, his hand gently touching the silver signet ring Luna had bestowed upon Catherine. The Guardian's path is never easy, he said quietly, but you won't walk it alone, not anymore. Nor will you carry your burdens alone, Catherine replied, covering his hand with hers. The contact sent that now familiar resonance through her, wolf recognizing wolf, blood acknowledging blood, potential acknowledging potential. They parted without further words, both understanding that their story was just beginning. Catherine crossed back through the boundary with her escorts, returning to the human world with new perspective, new purpose, new identity integrating the divided halves of her heritage. As expected, reordering her human affairs took time. She concluded her research projects, transferred her academic responsibilities, settled James's estate with full honors for his service and sacrifice. Throughout these weeks, she felt the pull of the Northern Territories growing stronger, the call of her bloodline responsibilities, and the connection to Alexander intensifying with distance rather than diminishing. When the full moon approached once more, Catherine returned to the crossing point where her journey had begun. The ancient stone columns where she had first encountered Alexander in his wolf form, where she had first glimpsed the world beyond the human realm. True to his word, Alexander waited there, his powerful presence familiar and welcome after their separation. No royal entourage accompanied him this time. No formal ceremony marked the occasion. This was personal, a reunion beyond politics or duty. The Guardian returns, he said simply, satisfaction and something warmer evident in his golden eyes. The Guardian never truly left, Catherine replied, touching the silver signet ring that had remained on her finger throughout her absence. Part of me has been here all along. Together they crossed the boundary once more, the veil between worlds parting effortlessly for their combined presence. As they passed through, Catherine felt the final pieces of her divided heritage clicking into place. Not human or shifter, not divided between worlds, but wholly both simultaneously, the bridge incarnate. In the distance, the lights of Silverhold beckon, the northern capital prepared to welcome its returning princess, its future queen, its destined guardian. Challenges remained, of course, political factions to navigate, boundary weaknesses to address, ancient responsibilities to master, a throne to eventually claim. But as Catherine walked beside Alexander toward her newfound home, she felt not burden, but purpose, not obligation, but calling. The wolf within her, fully awakened now, moved in perfect harmony with her human consciousness. The silver bloodline legacy, fully embraced, provided guidance rather than constraint. "Are you ready?" Alexander asked as they approached the city gates, where formal reception undoubtedly awaited. Catherine smiled, confidence and certainty flowing through her. "I was born ready," she replied. "I just didn't know it until now." Together they entered the city, guardian and protector united, the future of two worlds walking side by side in perfect balance. The moon shone down on their path, illuminating not just the present moment, but the ancient covenant their bloodlines had always been destined to fulfill. The preservation of balance, the healing of divisions, the bridge between worlds embodied in the daughter of both realms. Catherine Silverlight had found her true home, her true purpose, her true self. The journey ahead would hold challenges and triumphs, struggles and joys, but she would face them as she was always meant to, in perfect balance between her dual natures, with the strength of both bloodlines flowing through her veins, and with Alexander Blackwood standing beside her as equal partner, and perhaps, in time, something more. The ancient prophecy had been fulfilled. The bridge between worlds had been established. The balance would be maintained. And somewhere beyond the silver veil, Luna Silverlight watched over her daughter with pride, knowing that her greatest hope had finally been realized, not just the survival of her bloodline, but its evolution into something stronger, wiser, and more balanced than either world alone could produce. The blood of the North had found its destiny at last.